this memory, making history. Let's go. Get ready for it. Get ready for it. Get ready for it. Yeah, this is it. Go! 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 Yeah, this is it. Go! Go! Let's go! Yeah, this is it. Yeah, it's about to break. Got what it's gonna take. Go ahead and don't hesitate. Let's go. When you're made for this, yeah, it's obvious. Top another list. Let's go. Get ready for it. Get ready for it. Get ready for it. Yeah, this is it. Go! Go! Yeah, this is it. Go! Let's go! This is it. It's now or it's never. No plan with forever. It's now or it's never. It's down to the wire. Who gonna take the empire? It's down to the wire. This is it.
Welcome to FCP Euro, your #1 online source for European car parts. Since 2001, the team here has been serving the community with hand-assembled kits, comprehensive product information, and the lifetime replacement guarantee, all packed and shipped by our distribution center team. This month is a special month here at FCP Euro, as we have the first ever Cyber Month sale going on. So head to coupons.fcpeuro.com to find the best deals of the year, and thank you for your support.
There's a contrast in the early morning hours in the virtual Bathurst, Australia. An overwhelming silence shading Mount Panorama, an impending thunderstorm of racing engines for the second round of a racing season. After the season opener at the Nürburgring and a non-point 6 hours event at Spa, we get back to championship battles this week. But while drivers fight over points they accumulate, taking on Mount Panorama is not so much about racing other drivers. It's about surviving the racetrack. This is the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship, Bathurst, presented by Liqui-Moly. For 60 minutes, we'll race GT3 and GT4 racing machines up a mountain and back down again. Welcome to SRO America. My name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine this afternoon for our second points-paying round of the season. GT3 and GT4 racing, Ryan, qualifying just getting underway.
Hey Kyle, excited to be back on the call once again. Excited as well to be back to our championship races after the endurance race a week ago, and above all, excited about the fact that Bathurst is the track here this week. This place is magnificent. It is a challenge for the drivers. It is about survival, as you said, in a lot of respects, and you throw in multi-class racing, and I think we're going to have our hands full. This should be a ton of fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. One of the complications that we don't have, or we didn't have in GT Rivals last season, was multi-class. We have GT3 and GT4 cars here. Mount Panorama, this racetrack originally first run in 1938, so it's been around a while, but it hasn't gotten any easier over that time. It's narrow, got walls on either side, up a mountain, back down again. The Dipper, they got a corner called Hell Corner. It's a big, scary place, and it's going to be a lot of fun to race this afternoon.
No question about that, Kyle, that's for sure. I'm really curious to see what this is going to look like in a multi-class format. It is a really old-school track. You bring that up, and in an era where so many tracks have gone to the massive paved runoff areas where you really can't hit anything unless you try to, this is the exact opposite. It's a throwback. It punishes any mistake that you make. Some beautiful views as well. This one right here, skyline, and then the run down the hill into some of the most complex and treacherous corners in motorsports anywhere. It's going to be fascinating because as we see the GT4 cars taking to the track right now, you can see this is basically a one-lane racetrack through this part of the course, which means in a multi-class format, there's going to be a real challenge at hand, both for the drivers trying to overtake from the faster GT3 class, but also these GT4 drivers who don't want to impede anyone, but they also don't want to be taken out. They don't want to be taken out of their own fights as well. So that section of the track back there, there's no place to hide, and being able to negotiate those corners with out-of-class traffic, I think, is going to be the key to today's race.
Absolutely. So you're having a look down into the chase, one of the fastest corners or fastest areas on the racetrack. Before we get too deep into qualifying coverage here, we'd like to thank our partners for being with us this season. Of course, this is a home race for Liqui today, but FCP Euro, Liqui Corteco on board with us as always. Asus Republic of Gamers and Tough Gaming. A couple drivers have Asus colors on their cars today. A couple drivers in the GT3 category we'll get to a little bit later. We've also got some great giveaways going on in concert with Asus Republic of Gamers as well, and Fanatec, AWS, CrowdStrike, Pirelli, Rebellion Timepieces, and Total all with us this week. So as we roll into qualifying GT4, and you see Marin Edwards go around at the exit of the first corner, but got about a 16-car GT4 field. That's pretty deep. We got a lot of cars here, and the start of these races, I think the turn one is okay, but once you get going up the mountain, you got to get yourself single filed out. You've got two really good passing opportunities heading up here into Griffin's Bend, that second corner, and then really heading into the chase is your other passing opportunity.
Yeah, those are definitely the two best. You can get it done in that final corner coming onto the pit straight, and also Hell Corner there, turn one. It can be done, but it's not easy. That said, like you pointed out, this next section of the track going up the hill and then back down, it is fast, it is narrow, you have walls on either side, and really it is a one-lane racetrack. So how these two different classes are going to interact together, I think, is going to be the key to watching this race today. You get stuck behind a GT4 car and the guy you're chasing gets around, well, you might be stuck behind for 3, 4, 5, 6 corners while they're getting away, and that's going to be awfully frustrating. And I think as we get closer to the end of this race, tempers are going to flare, and at that point we might see some fireworks. The other thing to keep in mind is this track, it is narrow and it can be blocked very quickly, and that's another thing that the drivers, I'm sure, are aware of after all the practice that they've been putting in ahead of this event.
It is a bottle that you want to leave uncorked here at Bathurst if you start packing in cars. We saw that actually happen at the 6 Hours last week on the pit entrance, but this entire track is like a pit entrance at Spa with concrete on either side. There's trees, and you're heading up through McPhillamy Park. The walls close in, and then down into Forest Elbow here, the final corner in the downhill complex. The other thing about Bathurst, Ryan, is that it separates the car performance quite a bit. Now, all these cars are BOP'd very closely in performance, but uphill is going to prefer some cars, and going downhill is going to prefer other cars, depending on how nimble your car is, how torquey your motor is. Going to be great to watch these different platforms all compete together and see which ones are stronger where. But I think all the drivers are going to make this a really fun show. At the top of the board right now is Honor Cavillon, who is also, I believe, the points leader. And speaking of points, let's actually talk about that for just a minute coming into the day. Here is your GT4 championship standings after the Nürburgring. We've only had one points-paying round, and Ludovic Dow in the number, looking down the order here, trying to find what number he's in. He's in the number 220, 26 points, 4 back from Cavillon.
Cavillon had a dominant run in that first points-paying event. If you go back 2 weeks, that was at the Nürburgring on the Grand Prix layout there, and just dominated the GT4 class. But that said, you don't get any extra points for dominating. It's still just a 4-point margin, and anything can happen here in this race. I think Bathurst in particular is a real wild card, and just because you have strong pace, as we know Cavillon does not guarantee anything here in particular. I think that's true of racing in general, but certainly here at Bathurst among others. And so I'm really curious to see how this plays out in GT4. It's an interesting format with sim racers qualifying to be a part of the championship earlier in the week. And nice to see so many of the same names, and perhaps not a surprise, the folks who see this as an opportunity, taking it very seriously and attempting to qualify for a second straight week. Great to have Cavillon back in the field, and certainly she's going to be one to watch.
And in third, Simon Fisher in the 595, champion motorsports driver. He's going to head out of Forest Elbow down the back straightaway, currently 5th in qualifying. Having a look at the times on the left-hand side of the screen, 0.6 of a second between the top two runners. Then it's a full second back from first to third. Caleb John Lavender in 4th in that Audi R8 GT4. Fisher in another Porsche. Reynoso in a Maserati. And if I recall correctly, wasn't Reynoso part of that winning team from the 6 hours last week?
I believe you're right. That's true. It was a couple of them opted to go with a different platform in the race last week. We did not have a Maserati, but happy to have the Maserati roaring around Bathurst here. Not sure we've ever seen that, at least not in the last handful of years, if ever, in real life. But that's the beauty of sim racing, isn't it? You get to see some things that you don't get to ordinarily at Livermore Bathurst 12 hour.
I'm on board with it for sure. Reynoso's going to head through the curbing here in the chase, and that was a bit of a moment for him. As we head back around, I think we might have gotten that wrong. Fourth was, I believe, Reynoso. We have to double check that. But
well, at least they were running up towards the front.
yeah, they ran
good.
well. That's
right.
what we're trying to get at.
That
Caleb,
GT4 fight was really, really good in the non-points paying race there at Spa last week, the 6 hour race. And I think we had 4 cars racing all on the same lap in that one towards the end, and the lead kept changing. So
yes.
Apologies if we misremembered, but like we said, the theme is continuity, and great to see so many of the same names back with us.
Been a long week, too, so
there is
we'll
that.
make more mistakes, I'm sure. But Caleb John Lavender in the 999, he's heading through McPhillamy Park over across Skyline. That's what they call this portion of the racetrack. I love this. Look at this down the hill, left, and right again. And right here, this left-hander, the dipper, going to swing down, going to pick up that left front tire, going to slam into compression, carry it all the way out to the concrete wall, then do a couple more S's before you sweep into Forest Elbow. A spectacular portion of racetrack here in Bathurst, Australia.
And it's all about rhythm when you're driving through this section of the track. And when you're on rhythm, when you're on form, it is as fun a section of pavement as you're going to find anywhere on planet Earth. But it just takes a mistake of maybe an inch one way or the other, and you end up in the wall, and that rhythm is completely broken. It can almost lure you into a false sense of security. You're feeling so good, you've nailed it the last couple of laps, you're in that rhythm, you just mess it up a little bit and your day is done prematurely. It's also a section of the track where if you challenge it, if you push hard through there and you get it right, you can make up gobs of time relative to your competition, and you just have to decide how much risk is worth taking going through there, because as we've said several times, any mistake goes punished, and punished heavily.
Caleb John Lavender did improve that lap, actually, by about 1/10 of a second, did not jump any positions. Now we're going to switch the narrative to GT3. We're changing over to our top category here for our second points event of the season. And this is a pretty stacked field. We've got a couple drivers that we didn't have for our first round at the Nürburgring a couple weeks ago. And we talked about ASUS and our partnership with Republic of Gamers. Well, one of the drivers that is running for the ASUS team, that's Tom O'Gorman. He was in the booth with us last week. He ran this beautiful NSX a bunch of last season, but he's back for more in the number 94 ASUS Republic of Gamers Acura NSX GT3. And also running with his friend and a driver that we did see last week at Spa, DJ Alessandrini, in the number 47 Acura NSX GT3 today. So a couple drivers that we expect to see inside the top 10 here, Ryan, and with Tom's experience in SRO America's TC America Championship and championships and race wins he gathered there, he's going to be a threat.
Yeah, Tom's one of those guys that kind of drives you crazy. It seems like he's great at everything that he does. He's so good when he joins us in the booth, and I've worked with him at several events in the real world, as have you. And then you put him behind the wheel of a real race car, and he's a race winner and a champion there. You put him behind the wheel of a sim race car, and he always is running towards the front. He wasn't such a nice guy, you'd almost hold it against him.
Yeah, I've ridden with him on the racetrack in a couple different cars, and every time it's like he transitions into something non-human in the most spectacular way. Just this robotic sense to driving that you can't believe that he can do the things he does with race cars. But excited to see him back in the championship here this week. He's heading down the hill now. Tober Grahovic is here as well in the number 27. He's back out in the classic BMW colors this week in the 35, so good to see him. Michael Herzen in the 71 FCP Euro car is also here with teammate Nate Vincent, also joining us in the number 73.
Yeah, we've seen them as part of the championship here this year. It's great to have FCP Euro on board, helping to make this championship possible here as well. We told their story in previous race broadcasts, but if you're new to us, the FCP Euro team, as we had a spin there behind Michael just a moment ago, but this is a team from the real world that compete in the TC America Championship, which is under the SRO America umbrella, racing in TCR machines the last handful of years. Had a big program planned last year and had to call it quits early because of the COVID pandemic. so many of the folks on the race team, including the drivers themselves, are hands-on with the FCP Euro business, and as a consequence could not risk being sick and therefore having some kind of delay that would affect their business and more importantly affect their customers. So they made the tough choice to sit it out, but they're hands-on here, very much involved in the sim racing program that we have planned here for the off-season, and I expect that they'll be back in a big way when we get the 2021 season underway in SRO America competition this year.
Really excited to see what is on their plate for next year in that number 71. Herzen comes through the final corner and up onto the front straightaway for his first timed lap. We also mentioned the teammate in the number 73, that's Nate Vincent. A couple more drivers to keep an eye on. One of them is going to be Dirk Grunfeld in the 136. He is running the other, kind of the sister car, the BMW Corteco machine this week. New livery on this car, running 11th right now with a 2:04.035. We're going to see lap times in the low 2-minute range. And I think Grunfeld is probably going to go a little bit quicker here in the closing moments of qualifying, so we want to keep an eye on him.
Definitely. Still have 4 minutes left. Lap times here, right around the 2-minute range. You see Philippe Simard up there running basically a 2-minute flat right there. A little bit over that, but not too much. It has 0.4 of a second in hand over McMillan in second. We've got Whitmer running there in third. Back a little ways as well. Simard has been the pole sitter now the last 2 events. So the first race, official race of the season at the Nürburgring, Philippe put the car on pole, did not get a great start, and consequently did not get a great finish. But in the 6-hour Enduro last week also was the pole sitter and was part of the race-winning lineup there with Michael Kadacioglu, who's currently 7th on the timing screen up on the left, the winner for race 1. They were 2/3 of that driving lineup last week, but Simard definitely one to keep an eye on. That said, look at Whitmer up at the top, putting the NSX with the fastest time so far, narrowly edging Simard here with 3 minutes and 45 seconds left.
I was going to say Kandashioglu probably would be the one to watch, except for, well, as I say that, he just goes right to the top of the board. This is why you can't say anything until the qualifying's over. But Carl Whitmer was the winner at Bathurst last season, and I do expect that he will run probably podium if everything goes well. So Carl Whitmer is going to be a threat. He's running another one of those Acura NSX GT3s, and there's going to be a handful of them, so let's go through them now. Carl Whitmer will be in the number 22. He is going to be running up inside the top 10, I'm sure. So is DJ Alessandrini in a exact copy of that car, and Sally McNulty is also here. She is running an identical car right now. She is currently 48th, has not put down a timed lap here in qualifying. So going to be a couple of those NSXs we got to watch out for, and then there's a few others that are slightly different in coloration. But look at how heavy the top 10 is in Mercedes right now. Muller, McMillan, Muller, and looks like Blanton also in a Mercedes. Barman up there as well. So a lot of those AMGs cranking out good times inside the top 10.
Not a big surprise there from the standpoint that I think it was the top 5, right, at the Nürburgring that were all Mercedes AMG GT3s in the GT3 class. It's a widely regarded platform as one of the fastest and most welcoming of the GT3 cars, and I suspect that this might be the new version, the Evo version of the Mercedes, which was part of the recent DLC. So I think that would be allowed. Nobody's told me otherwise. So I suspect we'll be seeing the Evo version of the Mercedes here this weekend, which by all accounts is just taken the car that might have been the easiest to drive, if you can say that, had the most creature comforts, maybe some of the best traction control and ABS of any of the GT3 cars, and just made them a little bit better. And we've seen that have a lot of success. Ooh, that was a big hit right there. But even in the GT World Challenge America Series this year, we saw a couple of GT3 Evos from the Mercedes-AMG camp running, and the talk was going from the previous gen to this current 2020 gen was a big step forward.
Yeah, no Evos just yet here in GT World Challenge America Esports. We're going to get there. I think we'll have them at some point. Well, talking about qualifying here, have a look at the top of the order. Kandashioglu by 66 thousandths of a second over Troy Barman jumps into second. Carl Whitmer now gets pushed back to third. Then Simard in fourth. Hemza Gulzar in the number 14 runs in fifth right now. And at the conclusion of qualifying here, I think it's about time we should go over the GT3 points after our Nürburgring round a little while ago. Kandashioglu leads, Barman in second. That's how they are on the timing screen right now. That tells me that we're looking at par for the course for those two right now.
Yep, exactly. So, not a surprise to see some of these names up towards the top. A lot of carryover from the success at the Nürburgring, and Kadacioglu was really impressive last week at Spa as well. This was a different track, though, much different than the first two we've seen so far, and I want to see if perhaps the field will be a little bit closer here in Bathurst.
Brian Heitkotter down in 8th. He is a notable omission, I believe. I don't see him in the timing and scoring screen. We do know that a bunch of the Chris Forsberg esports guys are not here. They're busy slipping and sliding, doing drifty things at Formula Drift this weekend, so they will not be around this weekend. There's Golzar now working his way through the last couple corners and onto the front straightaway. Currently 5th, down about 2 seconds from his best lap. Lucas Muller is up in the green right now by 0.2 as he rockets down the long back straightaway.
And this is Lucas Muller with a K. We also have a Lucas Muller with a C. Confusingly enough, part of the same Haupt Racing team lineup, but right now it's Lucas with a K that we're keeping an eye on. Down through the chase, just a couple of quarters to go. Really fast, really difficult here to get this right. You've got a different camber change, you've got the elevation change. Those curbs aren't always the most friendly, but looks like he's on a pretty nice run right here with one corner left.
Yeah, those curbs are far from friendly. They're enormous here. And they're not really very compliant with the GT3 suspensions. In the GT4 cars, you can get away with it just a little bit more. I would suggest that most drivers try to stay away from that stuff here today. So looking down the qualifying order, Kadacioglu, Barman, Whitmer, Simard, Golzar, Muller, McMillan, the other Muller. That's Lucas with a C down at 8th. Tom O'Gorman and Cody Blanton rounding out the rest of your top 10. Notably DJ Alessandrini, who I expected to be top 10 in qualifying, only 12th quick here in this qualifying round. Looking down for some of the rest of the order, Nelson Mason is back this week. He's heading down the mountain at the moment in that number 36 Racers 360 Audi Niagara Motorsport car, and that's one of those Audi GT3s. I believe he's also the highest running of those cars right now. He might be the only, nope, not the only one. There's another couple of them out there, but he's the highest running of the Audis at the moment.
Interesting to see him. A couple times he's been in the background of a few shots, and it looks like he's gone on a few wild rides, but this one looks a bit more mundane, I guess you could say. Coming down here, looking towards the chase once again. Last flying lap for him, though, so the checkered flag comes out. If you cross the line before the checkered flag comes out, you're allowed to continue that lap and complete that lap, and that would potentially count towards where you qualify if it happens to be the fastest one that you put together so far. Let's see what Nelson Mason can do.
Heading into the last corner on the racetrack, and on the ABS again, sweep to the left, watch the curbing on the inside, drift out, get the curbing on the outside across the line from Mason. He's up by 0.4 and gets a 201.398. That will put him in 12th and bump Matthew Marlowe down to 13th, DJ Alessandrini in 14th. In just a moment, we'll go over our qualifying order for you. But in the meantime, we'll talk about, well, I guess we can do, actually, let's
putting in lap times consistently faster than everybody else at first, and then backed it down to a nice comfortable pace and kept it there. But it looks like he's going to have his hands full. Amazing. The top four separated by just a fraction of a second. That's really remarkable stuff, and I think sets us up for a really dramatic race here in just a matter of minutes.
I think it certainly does. We'll jump now down to GT4, the drivers with the red number boards. We're going to start with Cavillon in the number 56, pole position with a 212.048. Then it's 0.7 back to find Dow in the number 220 Porsche, so that's a pretty big differential. Then 0.4 back to find Lutkus in the number 727 BMW M4 GT4. Then Simon Fisher going to round out the rest of the top 5 here with Caleb John Lavender. So GT4 is going to be an interesting fight as always. It was one of the better fights towards the end of the 6 hours event last week. But I'm going to be interested to see how the traffic affects their battles today, because it's a lot harder to facilitate multi-class interaction at a track like Mount Panorama than it was at the Nürburgring for our opening round.
It's totally different. This could not be more of a dichotomy in terms of the racing surface from what we saw back in the opener to what we'll have here today. That goes for Spa as well. Both of those tracks do have some twisty portions where you have to be patient with out-of-class traffic, but they tend to be wider. There tends to be a bit more space to work with, less areas where you're going to be bottlenecked behind some of the out-of-class traffic. However, when you look at Bathurst, there's really none of that, and there's a reason, I think, that the real-life Liqui Moly Bathurst 12-hour, while it does have multi-class racing, you don't see very many cars outside of the GT3 cars entered, and as a consequence, I think those races have run relatively clean. This one, I think, could be a little bit different. Let's see. I hope I'm wrong, but I do suspect that there are going to be some fireworks with the GT3 and GT4 cars, maybe not playing so nice together here today.
The start of the second round of the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship, Bathurst, presented by Liqui-Moly, will return in just a moment.
Welcome to FCP Euro, your #1 online source for European car parts. Since 2001, the team here has been serving the community with hand-assembled kits, comprehensive product information, and the lifetime replacement guarantee, all packed and shipped by our distribution center team. This month is a special month here at FCP Euro, as we have the first ever Cyber Month sale going on. So head to coupons.fcpeuro.com to find the best deals of the year, and thank you for your support.
It's a home race for the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship for Bathurst, presented by Liqui-Moly. And with 60 minutes of racing ahead, what would normally be a scenic drive up and back down a mountain is transformed into an international virtual racing event. And we're just about to turn over 40 competitors loose on Mount Panorama. Welcome back to GT World Challenge America Esports. My name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine. The darkness, the early morning darkness here at Bathurst, Australia. We got a lot of racing about to happen here, Ryan, but first I'd love you to take me through a lap here at Mount Panorama.
Well, it is a challenge to say the least. It all gets started with that run down to Hell Corner, which is about the only straightforward corner on this track, oddly enough, with a 90-degree left-hander which heads down through the mountain straight. A lot of elevation change just going straight there, but it leads into a great passing opportunity in Griffin's Bend. Pretty high speed, down a couple of gears into that right-hander there. Then you're starting to go into the tight, twisty stuff in the climb up the mountain, up towards the cutting. Really tight corner, really treacherous. You continue to gain speed all the way up the hill towards McPhillamy Park. Then you crest Skyline, down the hill, charging down towards the Dipper, finally ending up in the Forest Elbow, which is a crucial corner as it leads to that massive Conrad Straight and into the very treacherous high-speed chase part of this track. Another great passing opportunity. And into Murray's Corner there, the final turn, the 90-degree left-hander onto the pit straightaway. That is a lap of Bathurst. We got to do this for an hour, and let me tell you, it is going to be a real challenge. Just driving by yourself around this place is a challenge, but throw in mixed class traffic and all the racing for position that's going to be going on, and it is going to be an immensely difficult operation for all involved here shortly.
Headlights are firing up. Of course, we've got a pace lap before we turn everybody loose for 60 minutes, but look at that grid here, Ryan. We've got, if I check down the list here, we've got close to 48 drivers lined up and ready to go racing for our second GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. As the field rolls off the grid, we're going to ride on board Nelson Mason. Look at how dark it is just beyond the headlights here. Look out where all the virtual fans are standing. It's pitch black, and as soon as you get separated from this main field, all the light you have to go on is coming out of your headlights and not everybody else's. So stick with the pack right now so you can see where you're going until the sun peaks over the horizon.
That's one of the unique aspects of this race. There are plenty of races that go into darkness, plenty that go for a full 24 hours. but I don't know of any outside of the Liqui Bathurst 12-hour that starts in the darkness and goes into the daytime. It happens pretty quick. Even in real life, the lighting starts to come, the sun starts to come up, and next thing you know, the track is bathed in sunlight once again. But those first few laps around a track that is challenging under the best of circumstances, you throw in the darkness into the mix, and it creates a real perilous situation for everybody. The place you want to be is where Michael Condacciolu is right now, out in front. If he can get a nice clean start through Hell Corner and then make this run up the hill ahead of everybody else, he'll have some clean racetrack to himself for several laps at least, until he starts to get into the backmarker traffic or anybody who had an issue there at the beginning. But for those further back, they're sandwiched between their competitors. The lighting is quite poor. The visibility is quite poor. Then you throw in the aggressiveness that you see from these drivers at the start, and man, it makes for some fireworks, that's for sure.
The LEDs aglow in the cockpits of every driver in this field. There's Condacciolu as he heads down towards Skyline, and we'll jump a little bit deeper in the field. There's Tom O'Gorman bathed in purple light as he heads to the top of the hill. He'll be rolling off in 9th place. And right now, this is probably the worst the visibility is going to be. It's going to get better as the race goes on. It actually gets pretty light pretty quickly here at Bathurst, but look at this. Down the hill. You can't even see it. You're just driving off a cliff into the darkness. And I just cannot wait to get this underway. GT World Challenge America Esports, the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship about to launch here in just a moment. They'll head on to Conrad Strait. They'll get racked up and stacked up, double file, 24 rows deep, GT3 and GT4 machines. The championship battles are only just beginning. This is only our second points round. And this is the last time that these drivers will get to take a breath, pull those virtual belts tight, Ryan. It's going to be wild, especially the first lap. It's going to be hard to see anything, whether drivers are going straight or otherwise. So you just want to hope that you see brake lights and no headlights out your windshield, I think.
Yeah, this is all about trying to get back into that rhythm like I talked about. Wait until the visibility starts to improve and then go on the attack. It's survival mode here for the first 5-10 minutes of this race. That already fast sunrise that we talked about, it's going to be accelerated, I suspect, a little bit even more so in this game. But nevertheless, the goal has to just be get through the first handful of laps, wait for the visibility to come up, and then you can go on the attack.
Down Conrad Strait, there's a kink to the right before you head into the chase. And the field is doubled up now as they come through the last couple corners here at Mount Panorama in Bathurst, Australia. If you're watching at home, make sure that you drop a like on the video and join all the GT World Challenge America Esports social networks. Why? Because there's some amazing giveaways that you're going to want to be a part of thanks to Asus and Fanatec. So check those out. In the meantime, we're going to go racing here at Bathurst. Michael Condacciolu in the number 96. He's out front and leading the championship. So if he can just finish where he starts, well, that'd be nice and easy, but it's not going to be easy today by any stretch. Under the Liqui Bridge, 48 drivers, GT3 and GT4, lined up. Final corner here, Ryan, and the heart rate is about to skyrocket for everybody in this field. Left-hand corner, and now time for the green flag. FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship from Bathurst, presented by Liqui. Green flag in the air, and we're racing at Bathurst.
Condacciolu brought him down to a relatively slow start here, looking for that green flag, and now they go fanning out 3 wide into Hell Quarter for the first time. Looks clean for Condacciolu, but look at that mess further back.
It's 2 and 3 wide. There's some pushing and shoving going on in the background. One car getting the tires off in the dirt. Big juke to the right. There's a car in the fence. Big impact to the background. Can't see which driver it is in the darkness, but there's somebody that just took a heck of an impact on the straightaway, and the whole field is bunched up. It's a big pileup towards the back of the pack. There's several cars just spread all over the pavement, and I just don't know. There, look at that. Holy cow. Yeah, that is a mess there, Ryan.
This is shades of the GT World Cup at Macau a few years ago where the track just got all blocked up. That was not what we wanted to see at the start. We talked about how narrow this track is, how unforgiving it is. Man, they're not done crashing, are they? I suspect those are damaged race cars there that just aren't driving straight, and as the drivers are trying to get them up to speed, they're not having any luck. getting the steering wheel to do what they wanted to do. I'm not sure what caused it at the start. I do think I saw an NSX, though, turn sideways at the beginning. I'm not sure who that would have been, but yikes, that was not good. And more crashes here coming up the hill for the first time.
Yeah, we're still not done. I'm looking up and down the order, and I see a lot of drivers in the pit lane. And this is sort of an unprecedented event here in the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Yellow flags waving at all the corner stations now. Lots of cars with major damage. And I'm just going to wait and find out exactly what's going on. We've lost a huge portion of the field. So if this were to happen in the real world, Ryan, I think this would be a full course yellow. You'd give it a go again and try not to have the same situation happen. But I think we just have to wait and see. This is we might just be good to go.
Well, that would also be a multi-million-dollar crash bill in the real world. Thank goodness we don't have that to worry about here in our esports environment. It kind of reminds me a little bit, this is for the older generation out there, of the 1996 US 500, which had a crash very similar to this coming to the green flag. And they actually had to restart that race in its entirety, going to backup cars for the bulk of the field after a several-hour delay. We're not going to have that issue, obviously. And the man happiest, I think, given the way this thing started, was Michael Condacciolo right here. He was able to get away clean, saw a lot of his competition taken out well behind him. And the best news of all is the track was clear by the time he came around at the end of one lap. So he's in the catbird seat right now. Barman had a nice qualifying effort, got a clean start as well. But keep an eye on that Ferrari of Philippe Simard, who has been remarkably fast every time we've seen that car. Already a pole sitter a couple of times in this championship this year, and certainly one to keep an eye on.
So looking down the list, you can see the drivers with the white P next to their name. Those are drivers that are currently in the pit lane. This will all cycle out. We'll take you through the field one by one as soon as everyone gets cycled. But Condacciolo, Barman, Simard, Gulzar, and Mason. Nope, incorrect. It'll be Lucas Muller with a K. He is currently in the top 5. Nelson Mason had to head back to pit lane. So there's also a time penalty assessed to Muller as well, a 15-second time penalty actually for both Mullers. So they will have to come down and serve that at some point. But the top 5 are relatively okay. And it looks like we're going to actually do a restart here. So what is going to happen now is we're going to basically red flag this race, and we're going to give this another try.
Okay, so this is like the US 500 in 1996 then. That's effectively what the kart sanctioning body elected to do with that race back in the day, and probably the right thing to do. It affected so many drivers in this field. You feel for Condacciolo, for instance, who was able to get through it cleanly and really had done exactly what he wanted to do, and now he's going to have to relive and redo the start of this race here. But hopefully everybody learned their lesson from the first time. It goes to show it does not take much. It just one little shove, and the way that the track funnels down and begins to narrow, you've got the concrete walls on either side. You can end up with a pinball scenario, bouncing back and forth, a lot of collateral damage. Hopefully we can avoid that here on the second attempt.
All right, so we've reset the cars back to the pace lap again. We'll give this another go. I like this idea. I didn't want to have to run the race with only a third of the field that we started with, but we talked in the pre-race about that possibility. The chance that we get a crash like that is pretty high. I mentioned it's like the cork in a bottle. If you plug it up, no one's going anywhere, and that's what happened there. That was just taken to the extreme, even more than I thought could happen. So we'll give this another go.
You throw in the darkness as well, and it's hard to know that you've got the track completely blocked up in front of you. As soon as you get on the brakes, the guy behind now has to do the same, and if anybody's just a little late, you end up with one car piling into another, and the whole problem compounds itself. Again, it reminds me more of the FIA GT World Cup at Macau a couple of years back. If you haven't seen this, it was a very similar situation. The Macau street circuit, similar in a lot of respects, very tight, a lot of concrete walls, and I think maybe 12 to 14 GT3 cars were written off that day in an accident that looked an awful lot like what we just saw.
I'm sad that you reminded me about that, because I missed an opportunity to go millions and millions and millions of dollars of damage, but I didn't do it, so it can't happen anymore, unfortunately.
Well, we don't have millions and millions and millions of dollars of damage, thankfully. We can just hit the reset button and do it all over again.
The beauty of esports.
That's right.
So in the meantime, while we're waiting for this race to get relaunched again, I mentioned earlier some giveaways, and you really should, if you're waiting for this race to get back going, you really should go check them out. Of course, ASUS PC DIY Day celebrates 30 years of ASUS PC DIY legacy and its passionate community of PC builders, modders, and gamers. ASUS and GT World Challenge America are working on some giveaways, and you got to find all that information on the GT World Challenge America social media channels. ASUS is a big proponent of building your own PC. And as am I, Ryan. I think building your own PC is always fun. You can get selected components, ASUS or otherwise. I recommend ASUS parts. Actually, this whole stream is powered off an ASUS RTX 2070 Super. So I highly recommend that. So check that out. Of course, Fanatec is involved as well. So if you're interested in some sim racing gear giveaway, check it out. GT World Challenge America's social networks. FCP Euro's got a Cyber Month sale going off, 10% off Liqui Moly conveniently. This is, of course, the Liqui Moly Bathurst 1-hour race here today. And with that, I think we're almost ready to get back launched again. So if you're starting out back, are you a little gun shy on the throttle pedal this time around, Ryan, or do you try to attack this harder and hope that you don't get wadded up this time?
Well, I think you ought to be gun shy. That's how I would respond to that. But then, if you think about it, if you're sitting in the back thinking, well, I didn't qualify the way that I wanted to, everybody else is probably going to be very conservative given what just happened. Maybe if I'm aggressive right here, I can pick up some spots. You know, in the back of their mind, all of these racers are thinking that that's a possibility. And that's what has me a little bit nervous. But I suspect we're going to learn from our lesson and we're going to have a cleaner start to this race. I certainly hope that's the case.
If you remember back last season, our Bathurst race went relatively clean. There was a couple small incidents here and there, but we only had a few minor pileups. So I retain confidence that we can get this race under green flag conditions for a long time. I think it's just getting out of the darkness that is the challenge. And every time you race in the dark, have you ever actually raced in the dark, Ryan? I talked to Tom about this.
Yes.
And he's raced at Thunderhill, but what's your experience racing in the dark?
I raced at Autobahn on the full course, and as I recall, I was trying to get up there from college. It was an enduro. My dad and I were sharing our Miata. And so I had a class that day. It was on a Friday, and I was going to college somewhere. Uh-oh, we've already got cars piled up back there.
Oh, man.
That's not ideal.
No, it's not.
But quickly back to the story. I had a class that day, and I got out of class and drove the couple hours it was to get up to the track from where I went to school, and the race had already started. And so I jumped in, and it was already dark. I had never run the full course there at Autobahn before, and tried to figure it out in the night. And I gotta say, I did not particularly enjoy that experience. So I know some people love racing at night. I do not count myself as one of them. I do it if I have to, but if I can avoid it, I do.
Well, a couple of drivers have had their grid positions sort of overlap, so we're going to see how this gets handled. But in the meantime, I think we're just planning on rolling with what we've got. Kondachiolu will have to retain his pole position again. And from my understanding, we might have to do a little bit of a server reboot here. So, of course, we had, remember last season, Ryan, I remember fondly our trouble getting all the drivers in the server at Bathurst. It's just been bad luck Bathurst here in GT World Challenge America Esports.
Yeah, so last time we had a very clean race, no problems to speak of as far as the racing was concerned, but there was some kind of connectivity issue, as I recall. Yeah, you're right. And for a time there, we thought we were going to have to postpone the event and try it again later, and then all of a sudden they got the fix taken care of behind the scenes, and we got our race in after all, and it looks like we're going to be trying to do something pretty similar here, at least in the short term, so bear with us, folks. This is just the hazards of sim racing to some degree, and you know you get delays in the real world too. Maybe it gets rain or you know, kind of some kind of power outage that takes down the timing and scoring system or what have you. These things happen, and we just have to roll with the punches.
And that's what we're planning on doing here. Just got to rejoin. I think we got to rerun qualifying as well. So we're going to do it all over again. So this opens up an opportunity for a lot of the drivers that were not satisfied with their qualifying effort. I'm looking at one, DJ Alessandrini, that didn't qualify where I think he would have wanted to. I think he'll be very excited to get another chance at this. And sometimes what is not a great situation for one driver is a spectacular opportunity for another.
Well, that's how you have to view it. And I think if you are one of the few that were able to get through it unscathed, you're thinking about how you approached it, what was successful, how do you repeat that without having some kind of issue as well that we saw affect so many cars there the first time. I hope that there's some lessons that can be learned, not just from those that were caught up in the incident, but from those who weren't. And maybe they're the ones we need to be most worried about because it wasn't as readily apparent, perhaps, what exactly went wrong. But again, that's part of the deal. It's part of racing at Bathurst. It's always a possibility. It's such a unique track for so many reasons, whether it's the kangaroos that you see bouncing around from time to time, just usually off the track. Sometimes they do hop onto the track. You have to look out for that. But also, the narrow confines. You have the starting in the dark aspect. There's so much about this track that is unique, and that I think that's why it's so beloved in so many aspects. But it's also dangerous. It's also a track that there is a lot of inherent risk involved. And so, with all of these things in mind, you have to try and sift through all of that information, and hopefully we'll be in good shape when we get started. It looks like we have the server reset going, so that's good. Now it's just about getting us into the race session.
Yeah, we're going to rerun qualifying, from my understanding, as I believe that the qualifying results do not get saved, so we'll have to rerun that entire session. Just hang tight for a little bit. In the meantime, in the background, you can hear Tom O'Gorman. He's throttling back up, and we have a couple minutes of free practice while everyone loads back in. And Tom's not wasting this time, as now we accelerate into the qualifying session. So in just a moment, we'll take you there. And I believe we're going to have the GT4s go out first, and then we'll have GT3s go again, just like we did a little bit earlier. So in just a second, as we get GT4 broadcast graphics pulled back up, and just like that, the magic of sim racing world, it's daylight again here at Bathurst, Australia, and time to qualify again. GT4 is out first.
All right, well, that's a real bummer for those that had a good qualifying effort the first time around, especially for Kadachulu, who had so narrowly taken the pole. I suspect that took a pretty remarkable lap to be able to get that pole position. So now we got to do it all over again. Cavallon had a little bit in hand over the closest challenger in GT4, so that's the good news for her, I suppose, is it doesn't seem like there's anyone who is too close to what she was able to muster, but you never know. And again, it takes just one little mistake and she ends up in the wall, and next thing you know, there's not enough time to get a fast lap in. So lots of different things that could change things up here this second time around.
So Cavallon heading down the hill here into the downhill portion, and then over the dipper, left hand, pull that left front tire off the ground, then sweep down between the concrete and setting up for a flying lap. And I think what we're going to see is drivers that learned last time when not to go qualify. This is always a discussion when you have open qualifying like this, Ryan. When and with what drivers do you want to share the racetrack? Maybe you want a slipstream. Maybe you don't want that distraction. You'd like to be by yourself. Getting your own portion of the racetrack to qualify on is going to be very important, and drivers get a second chance to make their situation ideal.
Yeah, that's right. And so it's about finding clean track here in the qualifying session, and the GT4 cars have a bit of an advantage. They get to go out first and put down some lap times and should have a really good opportunity to do so. It looked really busy during that qualifying session towards the end that we did before, and consequently I think it was probably difficult for some of the GT3 cars to be able to put in a representative lap time. We saw a lot of traffic there, and it really only takes one mistake by somebody else up ahead of you, and you've got to bail on your lap, and you don't get the kind of qualifying effort that you were looking for. So I think there are some that are going to view this as a real opportunity. Maybe something didn't quite go right, or they have a setup tweak that they have in mind to be able to go a little bit faster here in qualifying. But for the GT4 drivers, I think this is a real opportunity, as it was the first time around, just because there are fewer cars running at any moment, and they should be able to get clean laps in.
Cavallon heading through Griffin's Bend is the second corner here at the racetrack. Ludovic Dow in the number 220 Porsche Cayman. This was the second place driver from the tail end of the first qualifying effort from earlier in the day. Ludovic will try to go again and match what Cavallon can put down. JT Tammy back out on the racetrack in the Maserati. Seeing that as a fairly popular car choice today, more so than I would maybe popular. I think there's only 2 of them out there, but JT Tammy and Reynoso, the only 2 Maseratis out there. But these things sound amazing. Let's just ride on board here. It's a very throaty sound. It growls. I like the cars that growl. I mean, there's not a whole lot more to it than that. I think we said last year, shooting flames. Yep.
Yeah. Now
Go ahead.
This car is I'm also surprised we've seen it used as much as we have. I've talked about it on previous broadcasts. It's a converted single-make cup car, basically, that from a series that Maserati ran all around the world at one point, and it was converted into GT4 spec, but doesn't have a lot of the bells and whistles of a more modern, purpose-built GT4 car, namely ABS and traction control. It was campaigned quite successfully, actually, here in North America, in GT4 America, and what was then the Rally World Challenge GTS Championship by Jeff Courtney, who ran the car forever. I remember talking to him 2 or 3 years ago, and he was telling me, yeah, the car's long in the tooth, I think we're going to be done with it. And inevitably, the next year rolls around, and he's out there with his Maserati again. He just couldn't get rid of the thing. He was having too much fun with it. Ultimately, this past year, he did elect to move on to the GT4 car from Mercedes-AMG, but for so many years, we saw this running and being remarkably competitive, but it does take a unique driving style. It does take a certain skill set as well to extract speed out of it, because it's not like your normal GT4 car complete with all of those different driver aids.
Drag racing now, the Audi R8 down the straightaway here. There's another driver I saw jump in the session we didn't talk about yet. Andy the Lab is back with us in the 316. Here last year, or last time out at Bathurst. This time, got the yellow lab on the door instead of just on the YouTube channel. And Andy the Lab does an amazing car reviews and is a partner with ASUS Republic of Gamers, so that's cool to see this car back out here running again. And a nice woofie on the side of the door panel there.
Always welcome to see.
Looking down through the rest of the field, a couple of drivers we didn't get a chance to talk about. There's the 335 car, Verena May, onto the front straightaway in a black and magenta Porsche.
I love these onboard shots. First of all, ACC is just a beautiful sim to watch, and you listen to the sounds and they're great, and the visuals are wonderful as well. But then this track, you throw this in, and I just find Bathurst breathtaking. This is top of my bucket list of global tracks that I've not been able to get to yet, that I need to find a way to go, whether it's for the 12-hour, which would be awesome, or even the Aussie Supercars race, the Bathurst 1000 that really made this track famous. That would be phenomenal too. Just one day I'm going to find a way to get to Bathurst and check this place out for myself.
I will say you're probably in the correct line of work to find your way out there. So I think you're doing all right. You'll get there someday. I'd love to visit this as well as Spa, where we were last week. But talking about Assetto Corsa Competizione, we went over this a lot last week at Spa. The realism in terms of the visual detail and the auditory detail always blows me away. Just sitting around listening to, we actually hear you on the PA in the sim. If we go to WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, Ryan is actually in the game as a PA announcer, which is just a level of detail I've just never seen before. Also, I would love to be in the PA in any video game. So I'm a little bit jealous of that, I'm not going to lie.
It's kind of funny because I did not know that until you told me when we were there to start GT Rivals back in the spring. I had no idea that had happened, and really what it was, and it's true of all of the tracks. I know here in Bathurst, for instance, they have the Radio Le Mans crew plus the local Aussie television. You can hear them on the PA. So what the Kunos folks, I guess, elected to do was take a snippet from the pre-race broadcast from the previous year, and so at Laguna we had been there for the California 8 Hours, which was run in conjunction, of course, with the SRO America race weekend there. And so they must have grabbed my interview with Mario Farnbacher, I think it was, and threw that on there. And I will say that is a career highlight for me. Like the 12-year-old in me is absolutely geeking out that I can hear my own voice in a video game. I never thought that was going to happen. So thank you for filling me in on the secret, because nobody had bothered to tell me until you.
You're welcome. Joseph Kosovich goes a little bit wide at the top of Skyline, now down the hill. And that left-hander, when you enter the downhill section, there's a lot of paved runoff there, which is a good escape road if you get it just a little bit wrong. It's also easy to cut, and you don't want to be doing that too many times or you'd be forced to serve a penalty. So Kosovich did keep it on the pavement once he got to the downhill section. Sean Bowers in the 777 Audi, brightly colored, the green and blue on this car this week. Currently 9th in qualifying, a 2:15.147, the best time for Bowers so far.
I think it's interesting you talked about track limits. This is one track where we rarely will talk about it. There's just a couple of places where maybe you run afoul a little bit, but it's hard to gain an advantage, even if you try to, around this place by abusing the track limits. And so with that in mind, it's another reason I love this place. Any place where we can go where track limits is not a major part of the storyline is fine with me. And I think in general, that's why a lot of drivers who come and race in SRO America, having raced previously in other parts of the world, tend to like the tracks in the States. That's usually the case here, maybe where the tracks haven't gone quite the same direction that you see with a lot of the classic European circuits with some of that massive runoff that you see. Certainly there are places, Circuit of the Americas is the obvious example. There are parts of Watkins Glen, I think, too. But by and large, the tracks in the States are pretty punishing. If you cut the course, there's usually a wall there. And Bathurst is kind of along those lines, and another reason I have such a respect for the place.
Truly one of the greatest racetracks in the world, and it goes right up there to the top of my list with a handful of other tracks. Road America in the States is another one that I just find breathtaking for a slightly different reason than Bathurst. I think what captures my imagination with this place is the elevation change and the amount of compression and weightlessness that you feel over the course of the lap. Let's follow Bowers down the hill right here, kind of just glimpsing over a crest, and then as you enter this dipper, the car is going to slam down into compression again, and then you're just basically on a roller coaster for the rest of this until you get to Forest Elbow, where you're under compression once more. And then on the first sector, you kind of head over a hill. You might take flight over there if you turn the wing upside down. There's just so much elevation change around this place, and to me, you can go left and right as fast as you want, but until there's an up and down component, I don't really feel like it can be one of the greatest racetracks in the world. That might be a controversial opinion, Ryan, but I think you got to be going up and down and left and right to make it one of the greatest racetracks ever.
Well, I think any track that sits on that list, I can't think of one that is purely flat or even remotely flat, really. I think you're right. There's such a challenge involved with it because you get just added dynamics that the driver has to sort out with the feel of the car and yaw, the car shifting its weight around, and anytime you throw in some elevation change, it amplifies whatever the car is doing already. And so, yes, Bathurst, for so many reasons. There's a reason we keep on gushing about the place, but how can you not? It's so unique. There's nothing else like it, and it's also produced some really remarkable racing over the years. In fact, it's really sad, I suppose this is the time to mention it, that there will not be a Lukwamali Bathurst 12-hour this year. It's another casualty, or I should say this coming year, another casualty of the pandemic, unfortunately, and Australia being quite proactive with its policies and making incoming travel very difficult. Actually, leaving Australia, if you are an Australian, is quite difficult at the moment as well. But it made an international GT festival basically an impossibility, unfortunately, at this point, looking ahead to next year. But already plans are in place to revive it, looking ahead to 2022, and we're also excited about that. But I know my winter is going to feel a little bit empty without this classic race. I have spent many years camped out on my couch with a tablet in hand, watching the broadcast from Australia, and don't quite know what to do with myself in February without that on the calendar.
Yeah, it's going to be a void for sure in the racing calendar in 2021. Here's Josh Staffen in the 23. He's always a threat to win races and starts a flying lap right now as we've got our GT3 category cars rejoining and requalifying for a second go at this second round of the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship event. Dakota Dickerson is back, this time in an Acura. in the Acura NSX GT3 and I believe the GT3 Academy as well, Ryan. So Dakota's back out here. I believe he ran the Ferrari most of last season, but has made that change to the Acura lineup.
Exactly so, and that's great to see. Both mid-engine cars, there's some similarities there for sure. I love the look of this car, and I guess we should mention this. I know I've talked about it in past broadcasts, but you'll hear us refer to it as an Acura because we're Americans, and here in North America, the NSX is under the Acura badge, but if you go over to Europe, it's quickly referred to as a Honda, and that's true in Japan as well. I believe the North American and Chinese markets are the only ones where you'll see it badged as an Acura. So while it shows up as a Honda there in the top left of the screen by Dakota Dickerson's name, that's how it is campaigned in Intercontinental GT Challenge trim and certainly in GT World Challenge Europe as well. And there you see the Honda emblem there on the front, and a nice little correction from you there.
I'm not sure.
More recognizable.
Yeah, I can't. I wish I could save it like that, but can't do it, unfortunately. Nelson Mason, he goes to the top of the board with a 2:03.135, and then Kondacciolu straight back with a 2-minute .735. Lucas Muller jumps into second, splits those two, and Mason now dropping down the order as times start to filter in.
Nelson Mason had a pretty good qualifying effort, starting back, inside the top 15, but I think would like to have a little bit more, and lucky for him, he gets another chance at this. Driver with a real-world pedigree, won championships in single-seater racing, primarily in Europe. I told the story last week that he actually slept on the floor of a race team shop in Italy, working for that team, doing anything he could to have an opportunity to run some F3 races. The Canadian trying to make a career over in Europe, had some success, but ultimately couldn't quite make the jump up to Formula One where he was trying to get to, and has subsequently come back to North America, has some aspirations to do some GT racing, and is certainly a welcome member of this series where he had some success last year. I think tagged the wall a little bit a couple of corners ago, and that's where that rhythm I talked about comes into play. You hit that wall, and all of a sudden everything else, even if you just glance that wall, don't even cause any damage, your whole rhythm is thrown off, and it just ruins that portion of the lap.
You start to become a $500,000 ping pong ball once you start pinging off the left and right walls down there, so it's good to keep it off, and maybe you leave a bit of a margin for error as well. Hamza Gulzar goes second quick. Nick McMillan rejoining us. He ran a couple of GT Rivals events last season. He's back in the number 25 Mercedes-AMG GT3. Cody Blanton running in 7th. DJ Alessandrini got a fairly good lap time in 2:01.923. He's currently 10th. Matthew Marlowe is back in a Lamborghini this week. They had teamed up for the 6 hours last time out, but of course the champion Motorsports Pro driver working his way towards Griffin Bend. And good to see a couple of these paint schemes out here. We talked about how gorgeous these liveries were in past weeks, but there's a handful of them floating around. Matthew Marlowe is in one. Drake Burgoon is in the big thundering Bentley in the other.
And the Bentley was the winning package in the last running of the real race here at Bathurst. It was a big win for the Bentley program. They had been seeking a major endurance race win with this Bentley Continental GT3. It had some success in sprint racing, a lot of success in GT World Challenge American competition, as a matter of fact. But in these major global races like here in Bathurst or over in Spa, hadn't had that breakthrough despite having some great pace, and they were able to get it done this year, and it was a big jumpstart to their program. Unfortunately, the next round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli at Indianapolis did not go according to plan. They had a great start, and actually Jordan Pepper was a real star of the race early on in mixed conditions, running in increasingly wet conditions at IMS, but doing so on slicks, and really starred there for a couple of hours, but they were taken out in a mixed class kind of confrontation with the GT4 car, which might be a storyline for us here today when our race gets started, and really derailed their IGTC aspirations. But nevertheless, Bentley, definitely a solid and proven platform. Doesn't necessarily look like what you think of when you think of a race car, but it has been an immensely popular and successful platform in GT3 racing, and just goes to show how good the BOP system is.
So I'm interested as I'm watching the top of the order. It's shifted around quite a bit. We've got 2 minutes left here in qualifying. Barman had provisional pole for a moment. Philippe Simard snuck in there and grabbed it away in the Ferrari. Michael Condacciolu is up 3/10 on this lap. He's flying right now. Oh, he smacks the fence hard at the top of the hill. Going to stay in the throttle and hope he can make something out of it. If he goes up 3/10, he would still not go to the pole because Philippe Simard went sub 2 minutes. How about a 1:59.916? That is an unbelievable lap time.
That is outstanding in the Ferrari. Philippe Simard, a two-time pole sitter already, although only one of them, I should say, was in an actual championship race, because last week's race at Spa was an exhibition, being an endurance race. But that said, that is a really fast lap time. And I'll say this, Philippe is taking full advantage of that second opportunity to go qualifying and finds himself in the catbird seat here. We saw in our first attempted start just how important it would be to start up front in clean air and minimize the opportunity to be taken out by somebody else's mistake. And Simard has really grabbed this opportunity by the horns.
You know who just jumped up into third place? How about Tom O'Gorman with a 2 minutes 3:93? I'm sure he'll be thrilled with that lap time. Probably still going for more. And that Tomo Blue number 94 sweeping through the cutting and up to the top of the hill. Again, Asus Republic of Gamers on board this car. As he heads to the top. Oh, that's so close to that wall. And getting everything he can out of this car.
Part of the track. It's such a roller coaster ride, and much like a roller coaster, you really don't feel like you're totally in control, even when you're behind the wheel of one of these race cars that plunge down the hill. You've got the concrete walls waiting for you on either side. Elevation change, twisting left and back to the right, back to the left again, and it's all so crucial. You can't just take it easy through that part of the track. If you want a good lap time, you need to be pushing 100%. Even when going to 101% could be incredibly costly.
Look at the times here in GT3. We've got about 10 drivers within a second. We've got almost 20 within 2 seconds. That is crazy to me how close the field is. I think closer than our first go at qualifying. So if anything, this has just made everything even more confusing. I don't know who's the favorite now. And one of the notable drivers that number 22 of Carl Whitmer, again, our past winner here in GT Rivals at Bathurst, he's buried down in 9th. So I don't know what's going on, Ryan, but it's going to be a fun race should we get this going green and consistently.
Well, I think you're exactly right about that. I feel really bad for Michael Condacciolu, who had such a great qualifying effort last time, had the clean start. But from a purely selfish entertainment standpoint, having him starting back in 5th, yes, sign me up for that. I want to see him charging up through this field. I expect that's exactly what we're going to see. Throw Whitmer into the mix as well. We know how fast he can be. I think that Acura package could be quite good here as well. So there are going to be several drivers that are maybe a bit upset that they're starting where they are, given how the first qualifying went relative to this one. And you throw in a little bit of desperation or added motivation, however you want to look at it. I think we might have an extra set of storylines to keep an eye on.
We got plenty of storylines. I don't think that's going to be the deficiency at all this afternoon. Again, you're watching the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship Bathurst, presented by Liqui-Moly. Had our first attempt a little while ago with a big multi-car accident at the exit of Hell Corner that caused us to have to restart and try things again. So we have requalified and gotten everybody on the same page to go one more time. And I'm really excited to get this race underway. Again, it's only 60 minutes. We probably would have been about halfway through it by now had everything gone nice and clean, but that was not the case earlier in the afternoon. So we're going to give this another go, just about ready to tick over into the race session. And we'll go over the track map one more time for you before we get there. But I think we're going to take a very short break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Welcome to FCP Euro, your #1 online source for European car parts. Since 2001, the team here has been serving the community with hand-assembled kits, comprehensive product information, and the lifetime replacement guarantee, all packed and shipped by our distribution center team. This month is a special month here at FCP Euro, as we have the first ever Cyber Month sale going on. So head to coupons.fcpro.com to find the best deals of the year, and thank you for your support.
Back live for the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship from Bathurst, presented by Liqui-Moly. My name is Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine from SRO America. Going again, a second attempt here at our 60-minute event this afternoon. Our first attempt at the exit of Hell Corner. Well, it was aptly named as we wadded up about 20 or 25 cars in a kind of a cork-in-the-bottle scenario at corner exit. And red flag, we're going to restart it again. Requalified and got everyone lined back up. Philippe Samard is going to grab the pole away from Michael Kondacciolou. He will start in third. Troy Barman going to start in second. O'Gorman and Lucas Muller rounding out the rest of your top five. So kind of a reset, a recalibration, getting your mindset back in. The sun has gone back down below the horizon. It's going to come back up again. So all this mental shift to get restarted and going again, how much is that going to affect these drivers?
That's a great question, and I'm not sure we'll know the answer until the green flag flies. I imagine there is some frustration beneath the surface here, given the way that things started the first time. I think, too, that the concentration level, to try and keep that up, that's going to be a real difficulty. I know we talked about this on the broadcast last week, the 6-hour enduro, and I was having Tom O'Gorman talk about the difference between sim racing and racing in the real world. Which one is more taxing? And physically, the real world racing is more taxing, but mentally, he and I agree, sim racing provides an extra element of challenge on the brain because you have to process so much mentally, and there's a lot of stress involved. Well, there's no track more stressful than this one, and having already gone through the start once, now you got to do it again. I imagine that's going to be the real challenge for all involved.
Now, unlike the real world, though, we're going to get to reset and go again. So the mistakes that drivers made the first time around, you get a chance to write it, and it doesn't involve writing a check. And I think that's the good piece about the sim racing aspect here in Assetto Corsa Competizione. When wrecks like that happen, they're not as expensive as in the real world, maybe in time, but not monetarily, which is always good to see. So 47 drivers lined up for this one. And in just a moment, we're going to turn them loose for a pace lap. But let's go over the track one more time. Ryan, it all begins with the run down to Hell Corner, turn number 1.
Yep, that's exactly right, and it lived up to its name. As you pointed out the first time around, there was some contact there that caused a bottleneck, and it is narrow all the way around this racetrack with just a couple of exceptions. And right there in Hell Corner is not one of them, as we learned. So that 90-degree left-hander to the mountain straight, up to Griffin's Bend. Great passing opportunity. Griffin's Bend, you can get it done there, but it's tight. The curbs on either side, not forgiving whatsoever. Got to be careful there. You come around there and then up into the cutting. Tight corner, without a doubt. Really challenging there. Then you start the climb up the hill, up to Skyline through McPhillamy Park, and then charging down the hill. Left, right again. Through the Dipper, down to Forest Elbow. Slow corner, patient. You have to be so patient through there with walls on either side. Then back to power as quick as you can because you've got that massive Conrod straight down to the chase. High speed, really relying on the aero on these cars. I think the GT4 cars in particular would be a handful through that part of the track. You can get some passing done there if you want. A nice run through there also sets you up to make a pass in Murray's corner, that 90-degree left-hander, the final corner on the track, onto the pit straight once again.
Well, it's not easy by any stretch, and we saw that on display earlier, but I think with a second go, we might be able to get through those first couple corners. I think once you get to the mountain, get single-filed out, everything will be A-okay from there. But and also the sun coming up will aid in driver visibility as well. Like I said, in the early moments of a Bathurst race, all you want to see out the windshield preferably is darkness, but the second best thing is taillights. The worst thing you could see is headlights. That's drivers going the wrong direction. So hopefully that'll all be sorted out this time. We've got a little bit different order than we had earlier in the day. A Ferrari and Mercedes sharing the front row, then Mercedes Acura row number 2. A pair of Mercedes sharing row number 3 as well as row number 4. So the AMGs have kind of a stronghold on the top of the order right now. As we are about to begin our pace lap again, get those tires and brakes warmed up. The first time you're going to use them will be down into turn number 1.
Exactly right. So that first pace lap, you use that basically as a chance to get your bearings. We just had qualifying done in the daylight, as we saw. Now the daylight is gone. We start in the early morning hours in the video game, and then as soon as the sun comes up, as it will here in just a few minutes, the visibility will increase, but you haven't spent a lot of time most likely practicing in conditions that you start in. In the real world, you don't at all, and you just get thrown right into it. And so that's going to be one of the challenges here. I suppose the good news is we did just do this about a half an hour ago, so you do have some of those reference points a little bit if you survived the first crash at least. And if you didn't, you're using this just to get your bearings once again, find your brake points, find your turning points, just trying to understand what this track is going to look like here for the first 4 or 5 laps.
Well, we're going to reset our Rebellion timepieces back to 1 hour, 60 minutes at Mount Panorama. And if you're at home, hope you've got yourself a drink and some popcorn or whatever the Sunday afternoon leisure food of choice is, because it's going to be a good one here. It always is at Mount Panorama, up the hill between the concrete walls. The only illumination coming off of the headlights of the GT3 and GT4 machines. Corner workers virtually standing by, and in just a few minutes we're going to turn them loose one more time. This is the last time, again, we'll do this at pacing speed in theory. The next time up the hill will be well over 100 miles an hour, and hoping and praying that you can get to the other side. I think once you get one lap down, Ryan, you're generally good from there. I don't want to say that you're safe, but you're sort of out of the woods in some respects. Really, just the first couple corners are whenever one's on edge.
Well, certainly, if you can get through the first lap, you'll avoid the kind of carnage and chaos that we saw on the first attempt at this race about a half hour back. That's the good news. That's definitely what you are looking to try and do, but that doesn't prevent a big blockage from happening at one point or another. You can see how narrow the track is, and there's several places where one mistimed pass attempt, especially when you factor in the GT3 and GT4 cars sharing the track together, you can envision how this might happen through this part of the track, getting a bit frustrated with the slower class traffic. Just one ill-timed attempt could completely block the track once again, and then you can envision a scenario where some drivers would come piling in, but hopefully we can avoid that if we can get a nice clean start to the race.
Philippe Samard has the lights shut off inside his car. You can see how Troy Barman's got that LED illumination. Philippe Samard has those lights shut off. It is pitch black in there, and all he's doing is focusing out the windshield and getting in the mindset to stay out front. I mean, if you're starting on pole, you're probably in the best position of anybody out here, and that's our plan as well. So Samard, Barman, Kondashulu, O'Gorman, the Mullers, Blanton, McMillan, Golzar, and Whitmer, your top 10. Then Mason, Dickerson, Lee, Oulet, Marlowe, the rest of your top 15. It is a pretty stacked field here, with drivers from real-world racing and sim racing alike all joining together for the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America esports event at Bathurst, presented by Liqui-Moly. I'm out of breath, but the drivers got to take a big one, because they're going to need to have all the air they have saved up for our 60-minute race here at Bathurst.
One other thing I'm interested in is when Kondashulu was on the pole, he took them up to the green flag at a very slow speed. And I wonder what Samard is going to do. And I think perhaps an earlier start might help alleviate some of the backup.
I think that is 100% the case. Is if you kind of take a slow start. Everyone gets on edge and gets antsy. They feel like they want to go. They start bunching up, and it turns into a massive accordion with millions of dollars of race cars. So I think Simard's best opportunity is as soon as he can, launch that throttle pedal and get out of Dodge and to try to run away from everybody behind you. So Philippe Simard is in the red Ferrari on the right-hand side of your screen in the left lane, then Barman on the outside, and then white and blue Mercedes. They come through the last corner at Bathurst, the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship from Bathurst, presented by Liqui-Moly. On the front straightaway this time, 60 minutes of racing, about to turn them loose. Ferrari versus Mercedes versus Acura versus so many more. Green flag back in the air. We're racing from Bathurst. Through the first corner, side by side, Barman stays even with him as they head up towards the hill. They're 3 wide in the background. One of the Mercedes popping out of line. He's unable to go anywhere. Barman noses ahead down the back straightaway. Now he's even again. O'Gorman in third, watching from behind as they touch door to door, fender to fender as they head down to Griffin's Bend side by side.
Advantage Mercedes, you would think, but that Ferrari was actually able to keep a nice rate of speed around the outside. I thought he might be able to hold on to the spot, but it doesn't look like that's the case. Good look here from O'Gorman, and it got a nice clean start. Slotting into third place, watching the top 2 battle amongst themselves.
So far, the Mercedes has gone out front. Simard will lose that position, and nicely done by everybody so far as they head up to the top of the hill under skyline. Can't see much of it other than the glow of the lights here in the early morning hours of Mount Panorama. Down the hill for the first time. Sparks flying, cars hitting the curbing with the undersides. Kandashialu in fourth, right behind O'Gorman in that Mercedes.
Beautiful sight seeing those sparks kicked up, and keep in mind these cars running on effectively full fuel, so they're carrying a bit more weight. They're going to be lower to the ground now than they are at any other point in the race. Plus you've got the darkness thrown into the mix. That's why we see the sparks here now. You can see the exhaust already glowing on the outside of that Mercedes as well. Here's Kandashialu, who would have been the pole sitter, instead finds himself running in the 4th spot. Got a decent start here. It looks like Dakota Dickerson, or no, that's Blanton that's had an issue, dropping way down the order already in the pits.
Yeah, Blanton back in pit lane early on, but for the second position, Simard now defending from Tom O'Gorman in the Asus Republic of Gamers number 94 Acura NSX. He's going to pop out to driver's left, big dive on the brakes into the final turn of the racetrack, unable to complete that pass. He'll tuck back in line. Lap 1 complete. Barman leads Simard. O'Gorman, Kandashialu, Lucas Muller, the top 5. Our first lap done, right?
Now that was what we were hoping to see. It looks like it was relatively clean. Looks like the lessons from the first attempt sunk in, and now we can all settle in. Once you survive that first lap, as you rightly pointed out just a little while ago, now we can get down to the business of racing. It's always somewhat about survival here at Bathurst, but once you get through the first lap, you can turn your attention a bit more on the task at hand and not just on trying to survive the immediate aftermath of the green flag.
Nora Cavillon in the leading GT4. Not a whole lot going on back there for now, so we're going to take you back up towards the front because things could get wild up there. Barman leads and is actually extending that lead over Philippe Simard, but the trailing Ferrari, that number 42, is losing ground to Tom O'Gorman, and right behind O'Gorman is that number 96, the Nürburgring winner, Kandashialu, in the Mercedes. So it's going to be a pretty good fight for second based on the early signs here.
Yeah, absolutely. Kandashialu piling the pressure onto O'Gorman here, and Tom has seen firsthand, because he was with us on the broadcast last week, how good Kandashialu was at Spa. I'm sure he saw what happened at the Nürburgring as well, and now he's got his mirrors full of that Mercedes, the pole sitter in our first attempt at the start of this race. Has to be patient though. There's not a lot of obvious spots to get the passing done through that previous part of the track. This next section here, the chase, that high-speed right-hander and then into the left-hander, that portion of the racetrack does provide an opportunity, but you have to be brave and you have to get a great run down the Conrad Straight.
Into the braking zone, look up in the middle of your screen to see that video camera system that's feeding O'Gorman the information of who is behind him, and you see that 96 get a little closer, sparks spraying up from the underbody of the race car. And lap 2 complete now. Barman, Simard stay first and second. O'Gorman, Kandashialu, and still Lucas Muller. Nick McMillan rides in 6th place at the moment. And he is in another Mercedes-AMG GT3. Right behind him, Carl Whitmer in the 22 Acura, the winner from last season at Bathurst.
And for those just joining us, and if I caused any confusion earlier for those who were watching earlier, this is not the Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo. This is not the 2020 spec Mercedes. We don't have the BOP for it to run here at Bathurst, and there's not been enough testing to make sure that it's on an even playing field with the rest of the field to introduce it to the championship just yet. So this is still the previous gen car. Same thing for the Ferrari, because if you're an ACC fan, you know that the DLC that recently came out introduced those two new cars in addition to a new track in Imola, which I think is a welcome addition. It's another track that I absolutely adore. But you do have to worry about track limits a little bit there at Imola. Not so much here at Bathurst.
Oh, right in front of him.
Big spin there, and that is track limits at Bathurst. Those concrete walls. That's Lucas Muller just ahead.
Wow, he did a great job. The car spun and kind of tank slapped into the concrete. He was able to hang on to it after kind of banging the right rear of that Mercedes-AMG into the concrete. Don't see a ton of damage on it. He should be able to continue, but that is a heart-stopping moment for Muller in the 44 car.
And you do wonder how much damage he did sustain there. There are parts of the track where you can make do as long as the wheel is still pointed straight. It doesn't hurt you so much to have some aerodynamic damage, but this is not one of those. If you took any kind of damage that's going to induce some drag, you're going to feel it right here more than anywhere else, and that could set up McMillan for a chance to make a pass.
And it has a good run here on driver's right. Muller goes deeper on the brakes, but is he too deep? Overdrives the corner here in the chase, runs wide. McMillan sweeps around the inside and takes that position away, move McMillan to fifth.
That was some nifty stuff from McMillan. He set that up perfectly, applying the pressure as Carl Whitmer trying to follow through on the outside. Tough place to get a pass done on the outside. He's going to have to try and hold it there and get a good run out of Hell Corner. If he can stay side by side, he'll have a good entry into Griffin's Bend. He'll have the inside line there, but he gets run a little bit wide, and that opens the door now for Nelson Mason, who's on the attack.
Yeah, Mason did not really get the best qualifying effort in the world, but now he's up to 8th place right now, so a good early climb for him. There's some side-by-side battles going on in the background. I think Hamza Gulzar, nope, we're going to go back one more car. That's fine. Dakota Dickerson, who's in the number 72 NSX, and behind him, Jonathan Lee, Matthew Marlowe. They touch. Marlowe gets run out a little bit wide over the curbing at the exit of Griffin's Bend, gathers it back up, but the CMS Lamborghini got a bit of a hip check there.
That's exactly what it was. I was going to use that exact term, a hip check. Got alongside, just gave him a shove out of the way. Perfectly alongside, though, so it doesn't send any car into the spin. Maybe not the most welcome maneuver at this point in the race, not even 8 minutes in, but that's part of racing, and there's not a lot of great opportunities to make passes around this track. That's a big spin and a big slide.
Oh, back across traffic. Through goes Ben Green. A couple more cars squeezing, and there's an impact. There's a big crash there. A handful of cars, I think. Was that a teammate? Maybe. Yes, it was Drake Burgoon, one of the other CMS Pro cars. Oh, that's heartbreak early in the race for those cars. There's another BMW that seems to be stopped there as well.
Yeah, that's the nature of Bathurst. You have one car go around, and it can block the whole track depending on where it is. Luckily, that Corteco BMW that was off to the side there is in a place where he's not going to obstruct the track, and he can be a bit more patient. Dirk Brunveld trying to rejoin. That's a shame. Dirk's a really fast driver, and not often that we see him in a position like this.
Yeah, those 3 of the CMS cars all coming together, unfortunately. Dirk Brunveld, sort of a later part to this, waiting for an opportunity to rejoin the racetrack. One of the cars that got through that mess was Jason Alexandridis in the number 222, the Liqui-Moly colors on this car. And even in the darkness, you can see the red, white, and blue as they sweep down through towards, I believe we're heading into the chase as the sunrise is just coming in a few moments here.
Jason, one of our real-world drivers from Reno, Nevada, that's where he is now, had lived in California for quite some time, was set to run in the Sprint X category of Pirelli GT4 America last year for various reasons. Was unable to complete the full season as he had intended, but has been a member of the SRO and before that Pirelli World Challenge paddock for a long time, and really cool to see him as a part of this.
And right in front of them, you see Jacob Ruud in the 810 and Michael Herzen in the 71 as they chase each other down the straightaway. That's the 21st place battle as they sweep on by the camera.
A couple other real-world racers plying their trade here in the sim world, and good to have both of them back with us.
Really good-looking livery on that FCP Euro Mercedes AMG as well. So Herzen trying to move forward. Nate Vincent was also here, their FCP Euro driver. Haven't really seen where Nate is. Currently scored in 36th, so not quite as good of a start for Nate, but Michael carrying the FCP banner so far. Jumping up the road back to our top battle, Troy Barman leads now by just over 1.6 seconds. Philippe Samard, second place. O'Gorman Kondachulu, no major changes there. But Brandon Oulet is having his hands full with Lucas Muller in the 55 behind him. As we head down the back straight.
It does look like Carl Whitmer's been able to get past the other Lucas Muller. Here's some mixed class racing right there. A GT4 car, I think.
Andy the Lab there, yes, in the purple Aston GT4. And speaking of GT4, it's been a while since we've mentioned that battle. You can see on the ticker on the left-hand side of your screen, not a whole lot going on in terms of positions as Oulet goes around into the fence on the front straightaway and noses that Lamborghini into the fence.
Oh, that's really unfortunate there. Had a nice run going inside the top 15, and I think there might have been a little bit of contact there. It was not entirely clear, but definitely some major damage and losing a ton of ground.
Nelson Mason is also showing off my timing screen in the pits. I'm not sure if Mason has had an issue, but looks like I can't change a camera to him, so that worries me that Mason has maybe had a problem. One driver wanted to keep an eye on for a lot of the night was DJ Alessandrini in the number 11 Acura NSX GT3 because I expected him to qualify better. He did not, qualified about 20th place. He's up to 11th already, and his last lap was a 2:04.010, which wasn't very fast, but let's keep an eye on him throughout the day as he learns how to drive this car and gets through traffic. I think he'll be a top 5, maybe even a podium competitor by the end of this thing.
Yeah, you told the story a little bit last week. A sim racer with a lot of experience and actually just a really good video gamer, I suppose you could say. Had a lot of success in Halo competitions, you were telling us, and has kind of put that same focus here lately on sim racing and has been a quick study, but relatively new to Assetto Corsa Competizione and learning his way around. But you know, at a certain point, that skill set will translate once you get a bit used to the idiosyncrasies of the different platform that you're working with, and definitely a name to keep an eye on.
And not only is he a driver in the sim racing world, he also races in a couple different grassroots level series in the real world. He has a 2006 Honda Civic SI that's got some fairly sizable aero components on it, so he knows how to drive a little mini GT3 car. Now, not quite the real deal, but right now there's a car in the grass. That's the 335. That is a Porsche GT4 car. That is Verena May in the Stargirl Racing Porsche getting back rolling. We also saw right behind Alessandrini, I believe that was Dakota Dickerson in another Acura NSX.
That's right, Dakota, part of the HPD GT3 Driver Academy. You made reference to that earlier. One of 4 drivers selected. Carl Whitmer, one of the other 4, as a matter of fact. And it's a way for Honda to kind of identify some up-and-coming talent and give them a chance to sample GT3 machinery, get some really good coaching from some Honda drivers. Ricky Taylor, who drives a an Acura prototype. Trent Hinman, who's had a ton of success, including winning the silver championship in GT World Challenge America last year with Sheldon Blackstock. He's been on hand to help out. Dane Cameron as well, who's been part of the Intercontinental GT Challenge driver lineup for Honda/Acura over the last couple of years, in addition to driving prototypes. So it's really a great opportunity there, and a way for some young drivers to get hands-on with GT3 machinery that can really be a big boost for them in their careers.
Well, you'll notice if we look off the nose of Dakota Dickerson, you see the sky is lightening up. The sun is just about to start peeking over that horizon and bring some daylight to Mount Panorama. 46 minutes to go, or 15 minutes in. If you've just joined us, make sure that you don't miss the Asus Republic of Gamers and Fanatec giveaways on the GT World Challenge America social media channels. So make sure that you head over to Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those good places to get yourself entered in those giveaways. You do not want to miss it. Free things are great things, Ryan, so especially if they're from Asus or Fanatec, both really awesome sim racing gear providers as well as PC parts providers. So Dickerson continues to chase Alessandrini up at the front. Not a whole lot has changed, but the gaps have gotten tighter between Samard, O'Gorman, and Kondaccioglu.
This has been an impressive battle here, although I got to give a shout to Barman, who's running way out in front now. 3.5 seconds clear of Samard, but this next group is running within just a couple seconds of one another, and I've been really impressed with what Tom O'Gorman has done. We knew Kondaccioglu would be fast and would be there to put some pressure on him, and he was early on, and I wasn't sure that Tom was going to be able to keep Michael behind, but as it stands, that's not been the case at all, and in fact, right now, it looks like it's Tom putting the pressure on Samard for the second spot. This is as close as he's been in the last couple of laps.
Now, I talked to Tom extensively this summer at a bunch of the events that we were able to go to. Tom shared his experience from GT Rivals in the spring and said that he struggled a little bit in the spring and to find consistency, and it sort of hurt his mindset in the real world in his race car this season. So he took a step back away from sim racing. You see him scrape the wall a little bit through Philby Park. He took a step back away from sim racing for a little while. He has not had a whole lot of practice. He's put a couple days in, but not nearly as much as he had for GT Rivals, and he's found a much more natural pace, I think, early in the going here in our second round. Seems like he's right on pace, and with the exception of a couple small wall strikes, he's had a really solid race so far. So he's got his mindset and the pace in the right direction today.
Well, I think a small wall strike at Bathurst is kind of like the Darlington stripe in the NASCAR race, right? You wear it as a badge of honor. It's basically inevitable over the course of a race around this place. And if that's all you're doing, knocking a mirror off or something like that, then it's probably survivable. But it's about making sure that you don't do it too often. It doesn't affect the tires. It doesn't affect the aero on the race car. And trying to, and most of all, making sure you don't hit it so hard that it starts you into the pinball effect, bouncing back and forth.
Leader Troy Barman is into some GT4 traffic, as are the second place cars right now. Philippe Samard going 3 wide underneath a couple of the German GT4s. Tom O'Gorman, big dive on the brakes into turn number 1. Going to close up and pass a couple of those cars as well. And Kondaccioglu, where has he gone? He has lost a little bit of ground in the chase, so he's got some work to do to catch back up.
Yeah, that's the give and take of mixed class racing, and it's really going to make a big difference here in just a moment. In this next part of the track, when they start to climb the hill, if you get stuck behind someone like Tom or Kondaccioglu here might be, let's see if Michael can get by. This is a hairy place to try and make a pass. Nice move, and that took some cooperation with the GT4 driver there. But if you get stuck behind and the car that you're chasing does not, then that could be really costly. I'm talking about 3, 4, 5 seconds maybe even more, because there's not an obvious place to get that pass done through here.
No, we're seeing lap time differences for the race leaders of about 10 seconds a lap. So if you get stuck behind even for half a lap, that's 5 seconds. That is so hard to make up and really easy to lose. So now look at Samard. He's gotten through some of the traffic, but stuck behind some more. That closes Tom O'Gorman up. Samard has to go to the right, squeezes up the inside of one of the Maserati GT4s. O'Gorman on the attack now as they go around the outside in Forest Elbow.
Come on, if you're in that Maserati, what do? You got to look at where you're going. That's one of the most difficult corners on the track, but now you've got these fire-breathing GT3s breathing down your neck. You got to look out the back, too, to make sure you know how many cars are coming, where they're positioned, so you can anticipate and keep yourself out of the way and in an uncompromised position. It is very difficult to be the slower car in this situation. I think it is much easier to be the faster car, the top class, because you can kind of dictate when these passes happen. When you're in the slower class, passes happen to you. Wherever.
For the race lead, that was a car that dove into the final corner, and Barman just missed it. He almost got cleared out by a car that was trying to get their lap back. It looked like one of the CMS Pro drivers, but I didn't see exactly who it was. They just came shooting through the frame. But just like that, Barman almost lost the lead. Look at how much time it cost him, as here comes Samard with a big run.
Yeah, this is a huge run coming up the mountain straight here to Griffin's Bend. Not sure if he's going to be close enough. It looks like Barman taking a bit of a defensive line towards the middle of the track, as it is very much his right to do. Arrives there in plenty of time. No real opportunity for Samard here this time. Now he's going to try and heap on the pressure and put himself in a position where he can make a run down the Conrad Straight, but he's got to be right on the gearbox of this Mercedes all the way through this section of the racetrack.
I'm noticing that Simard's weakest point seems to be climbing the hill. You see O'Gorman close here. Now Simard's going to start to gap that 94 Acura at the top near McPhillamy Park. This is where O'Gorman seemed like he's struggling with some understeer there, but they've got some more traffic in front of them. Looks to be, is that a McLaren GT4? It's going to squeeze up the inside on the downhill. No, it looks like it's an Aston rather. So Barman's through. Simard gets held up a little bit. O'Gorman nowhere to go.
Exactly it. Nowhere to go. So the traffic.
Oh, some contact. Simard
Nope.
got some contact from the 94 car from behind. Kondachelou goes through, so Simard drops 2 positions in one moment. There were some GT4 cars double wide in front, so move O'Gorman to second place and Kondachelou to third.
We were on board with Tom there and got a great shot of what happened, and you get a sense for how quickly things can happen from that onboard camera. Nothing he could have done. He was doing his thing, running as close to Simard as he could in order to try and set up a pass. Traffic intervened. Simard had to jam on the brakes, and there was nothing Tom could have done to avoid getting in the back of him. That's a tough break for Simard. Hopefully O'Gorman's car is not damaged too badly. Same thing for Simard. We know that car is fast, and there's always a chance he can recover here, especially with the out-of-class traffic to deal with.
There's Dakota Dickerson up the inside of some of that GT4 traffic. Matthew Santiago behind for 13th. That's a couple second difference between them. We'll check in our GT4 category right now. It's not really much of a fight at all, at least at the top of the order. Right now, it still seems to be Cavillon leading by 8 seconds over Ludovic Dow in the 220. And other than that, I mean, these guys have found some room to race, and it might be better that they've got some space because they've got to help facilitate those passes for the GT3 cars to get by. Difficult to do that when everybody's racing each other.
Well, down at the bottom right of the screen by Honora's name, under her name is the team name, and it might have a name in there that you might recognize, the Jean Alesi Esports Academy. Yes, that's right, it's the Jean Alesi who raced in Formula One for all those years and had a lot of success for various teams, and also actually made a kind of random one-off start at the Indy 500 a few years ago. But he's been involved in esports and helping to identify some talent there, and Honora racing from under that stable, and clearly showing why she was so sought after as far as sim racing is concerned. Just dominant back in the first race of the season at the Nürburgring, and continuing that domination here at Bathurst.
And for second place in class, Dow now a little bit of pressure from John Lavender. And look in the background, I think that's actually our overall race leader, Troy Barman. Yes, it is. And he's got O'Gorman chasing him down. The gap has fallen about a half a second. Now Barman jukes to the right to get by one of the Audis and storms up the Conrad straight under the Pirelli bridge and towards the chase. Barman just carving his way through traffic and just hoping and praying nothing goes wrong.
Well, it's helped him out here recently. I think he lost that big advantage he had built up because of traffic, but now here subsequently he's been able to put it to good use and catch it at the right time, build a bit of a gap. Also, the contact between O'Gorman and Simard certainly had something to do with that. Here comes Tom now, working his way to the outside. That's actually a slower GT3 car that he's trying to pass. You can tell the difference between the GT3 and GT4 Mercedes by really the size of the wing is the place to look there. That bigger wing makes it pretty clear it's a GT3 car. Nice job by Tom, able to knife his way through that traffic. He's got that lead down under 2 seconds at this point, running very strong.
And meanwhile, that is the battle for second in GT4. Ludovic Dow in the 220 Porsche. That's that red and black Cayman that you see just up the road. The 999 of Caleb John Lavender is the third place car in the Audi R8 GT4. So that's a good scrap for position there as they head up the hill towards the cutting.
Right now they have a chance to fight amongst themselves. No GT3 cars to interfere, but with lap times between the two classes somewhere about 10 seconds apart from one another, there's really not going to be much of this race where they can just focus on their own battle. They're going to always be watching the mirrors, wondering where the next set of GT3 cars might be coming from, and then trying to plan how they can use that to their advantage.
Car turned around. It's one of the Caymans that is stuck, it looks like, at the top of the hill. I could not get a look at what driver that was. Verena May again in the 335. It's been a tricky race so far, and kind of in a bad spot here, pointed the wrong direction to traffic. It's difficult to get turned back around, especially these cars have traction control and ABS. and you can turn that off momentarily to spin the tires to turn the car around, as see what we're going to do here, but it's not easy to get those cars flipped around if you're facing the wrong direction.
No, and there's not a whole lot of room here to work with between those two walls, although a little bit more than we saw in the pit lane there at Spa last week. And if you know, you know, and if you don't, then go look at our video from last week. We saw something kind of similar that was straight out of one of the Austin Powers movies, I think.
So I think the story for me for today so far, as we approach the halfway point of this race, has been track position. Troy Barman started up near the pole position, and here he is now still leading. O'Gorman was able to jump up a couple spots. Kondashioglu started 5th. He's only made it up to 3rd. So it seems like, even though Kondashioglu had immense pace in the first qualifying session, he's been unable to translate that into passes, especially with the chaos of GT4 traffic.
Yeah, that's very true, and it's come as a bit of a surprise, although I think he showed how patient he could be in that win at the Nürburgring. Really didn't go out of his way just to set a ton of blisteringly fast laps when he got out in front. Built a nice margin and maintained it, and I was impressed with his racecraft there. And we might be seeing something similar here in the early going. Still 35 minutes left. We're not even halfway through this race.
Climbing up through the cutting, Barman's lead is actually shrinking quite a bit. It seems like O'Gorman's got a little bit more pace. Last time by, a half a second quicker for the Asus Republic of Gamers NSX, running in 2nd place right now. Kondashioglu was a hair slower than O'Gorman, so I think everybody is sort of where they should be, with the exception of the top two. They might swap positions here in a little bit. Nelson Mason, who we were wondering about earlier, it looks like he's dropped off of the timing screen entirely now. DJ Alessandrini, mentioned earlier to keep an eye out for this guy. He's up to 7th, Ryan, and still climbing.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up a moment ago. I noticed that as well. And you can really effectively, I think, put him up another spot. If you look, Lucas Moeller, one of the two Lucas Moellers, running at 4th, has that 15-second penalty that's going to be added at the end of this race. And so as long as Alessandrini is within 15 seconds of that car, that's effectively another spot when the race has wrapped up at the end of things. So that's good news, but definitely on a charge here. And another car out of the Honda Acura stable just ahead. Carl Whitmer was doing a great job, but now has dropped down to 8th, and I'm not quite sure what led to that.
I see a little bit of damage on that car, so might have had a loop up in the mountains somewhere. Looking at that car, it looks not quite as put together as it was at the start of this race. The defending winner of this event from in the spring, but it has not quite gone to plan. It was a little higher up the running order at the start of the first attempt of this race, but has since dropped down towards the bottom half of the top 10.
If I could, I'd like to call our attention to the 10th place car. Cairns right there was part of the 3-driver lineup that won last week at the 6-hour exhibition race at Spa, and was the less heralded of the 3, but turned in some really good stints in the middle of the race and kept them in contention, and has turned in a really nice run here so far, now running inside the top 10 after qualifying quite a ways down the order.
Yeah, a really good run for Cairns so far. Just got by Dakota Dickerson in the number 72 to put that Bentley up into the top 10. Now, this is a unique car in this Assetto Corsa Competizione game, because to my knowledge is the only non-left-hand drive vehicle in the GT3 category. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, especially if you're one of the drivers that likes to test out to see which car you feel more comfortable in. Usually I don't think being on the right or the left side of the car makes a big difference. However, the walls here are so close that if you switch which side you're sitting on the car, you can misjudge it even by an inch, and you're going to find yourself with a damaged race car and an over day. So it takes a little bit of talent and skill to switch between left-hand and right-hand drive cars.
Yeah, I think so too. I've tried it out a little bit, and I find it to be quite challenging. Anytime I've driven a right-hand drive car on a sim, I think it takes me a little while to wrap my head around it. And I've talked to several drivers about it in the real world. Alvaro Parent comes to mind, who's an ace in basically any kind of GT3 car. And we'll go back to that story in a moment, because look at this. I think we've got a change for the lead.
We do. O'Gorman got by on the Conrad straight, managed to complete that pass into the chase. So move Tom O'Gorman's Republic of Gamers Acura NSX to the race lead. Now Barman wants it back, and he's right there behind that Acura as they come across the line. Kondashioglu keeping pressure on Barman, pops out to the left, now back in line for Hell Corner.
I'm not sure that's going to work on Tom. He's got a lot of experience, both in sim racing and in real-world racing. Just a little pop to the inside is not going to get in his head. But I think this is fascinating. We've got Kondacoglu as close to the lead as he has been all race long. If you're looking for a star driver from the first 2 races this year, this is the one. He's Canadian. He's a singer-songwriter, interestingly enough. Does this on the side and is awfully fast and has himself in prime position here despite a less than ideal qualifying effort starting in 5th. Still has 30 minutes, half the race to go.
Climbing up the hill through the cutting, and Barman is not letting Tomo get away. As they come up the hill to the right, hug the wall on the right. Whoa, Tomo on the curbing. Barman has a look to the inside. Tomo's going to slam the door there. Now watch the curb on the left. You don't want to get on that one. Now out to the concrete again. Halfway through this race here at Bathurst, presented by Liqui-Moly in the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. O'Gorman has just wrestled the lead away from the Mercedes of Barman and now trying to hang on to it.
Yeah, so right on board here with Barman, and you tell me, viewer at home, where do you make a pass on this track? What are you supposed to do in this section? You just got to be so patient and try and set yourself up for this right here. Back on the power as quick as possible. Don't get into that wall on the outside. Get to the left to take the shortest route here, and now in the slipstream, can you get a toe off of that Acura, Honda, whatever you want to call it? The NSX up the road in front. Not a very big car relative to the Mercedes. Not as big of a greenhouse, doesn't punch as big a hole in the air. That might be to Tom O'Gorman's advantage.
I think Tomo would love to start playing with some traffic here to kind of slice and dice through the GT4 field. Generally, again, blue flags are not a mandatory command here in our GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. They are just an advisory flag, but drivers will typically give the race leader a little bit more leeway. Once you start getting back in the order, they're not going to be so willing to move over for you. So Tomo might find that to be advantageous to him here as he starts getting back into some traffic. There's Alexandrides, I believe, in that Liqui-Moly 222 Porsche. As Tomo goes by, and as many cars as he can fit between him and Barman, that's to his advantage right now.
I'm interested to see that Kondacoglu has dropped off of this lead pair. I don't think he's got quite the pace of O'Gorman or Barman. I think they have been the measure of this field to this point. I wonder what Simard could have done, but I'm looking at the running order, and Simard is way down there now in 16th, so something else must have happened there. I think that car might have been in consideration for one of the fastest in this field based on what we saw in the early going, but something has gone awry. We saw the first incident, which was kind of a mixed class racing situation. Simard got boxed in, and Tom O'Gorman had nowhere to go and got in the back of that Ferrari, and Simard got the worst of that. But something has happened since then because he was still up in the 4th spot just a moment ago.
Yeah, so something else must have happened. Lap times are a couple seconds off pace, so must have had that damage get even worse. That could be slowing that car down as well. Barman still about a car length behind O'Gorman now with 27 minutes remaining. Taking a look at their lap times, O'Gorman is 0.6 off his best, Barman is 0.8 off. But between the two, Barman has the quicker lap. Now, among the front three, Kondacoglu's best lap was 0.4 better. I wonder if Kondacoglu is waiting in the wings here and maybe preserving some tire for the end of this race. Now, these Pirellis are pretty good, long-lasting tires, but you have to wonder if Kondacoglu's keeping something in the tank for the end of this race.
That's a great question. And if you're new to sim racing, don't roll your eyes. I mean, this is something that is modeled very accurately here in Assetto Corsa Competizione. It is about preserving tires. No pit stops here in this race, at least if you want to win. You could pit if you wanted to, but that would really drop you out of contention. So you've got to use that same set of virtual rubber from start to finish. And so there is an art to preserving those race tires over the course of an hour-long run. So far, I don't know if that's the case, but hopefully it is. I'd love to see a three-way battle up at the front.
Well, Tomo just ran his best lap of the day, a 2:01.926. Not quite the CrowdStrike fastest lap, but it is awful close to it. Only a couple tenths off Kondacoglu. Some blue flags waving. A Maserati just up the road as the leaders approach. And this is where things get dicey, trying to pass traffic on the mountain here, Ryan.
And it's really difficult here if you're the GT4 car to know how many cars are coming through behind you. Sometimes you might only see the first two and there's a third, and you have no way of knowing, and it can really put you in a difficult position, but really clean racing through that section just a moment ago.
And this is where knowing Tom personally, I know how he is as a driver, and he is just in the zone right now, and he's feeling the pressure, though, with Barman behind him. A dab on the brakes into the downhill section. Barman is right there as they head down the hill into the dipper.
Well, Tom O'Gorman did a great job there to get back in his rhythm. It looked like he got off just a hair early on, and it really throws you off the rest of this section if you can't somehow regain that rhythm, get yourself back in the right position on the racetrack, and he was able to do it. And as a consequence, looks like a nice run there down to the Conrad Straight with enough of a gap. This is what he's been able to do the last couple of laps here, able to maintain that gap, moving to the left and to the right, trying to break the slipstream, but I think he should have a big enough advantage here through the chase to avoid any kind of overtaking maneuver.
And now that we've already done an initial run through the GT4 field, the traffic should be a bit more spread out, so it should be a little easier to make those passes without having to split people 2 and 3 wide in the tightest of places. Now for the final corner, 25 minutes to go. That traffic runs wide. That's an M4 GT4 car off the racetrack. Take our attention back to DJ Alessandrini. He's up to 5th place. He continues his climb, closing in on now on the 44 of Lucas Muller, who's just up the road in that 44 kind of pumpkin orange Mercedes-AMG GT3, so it's going to get dicey for 4th, and I think DJ can even get up to Kardashilu. Needs to pick up the pace just a touch to get there, though.
If you're a fan of GT3 racing, you know that livery they ran on in the NLS, part of the Nürburgring Landschlacken series that has replaced VLN, at least in terms of the naming of that series, and had a lot of success over the course of this year. It was the HPT team before that. And I think I got my acronyms confused. Nevertheless, this is an actual real-world team that's had a lot of success over the years, has gone through a name change. Hubert Haupt, who's been a long-time Mercedes factory driver, now has taken an ownership stake in it and also is very invested on the esports side. And Lucas Muller, both of them actually, who drive for the sim racing team, they also work with the real-world drivers, coaching them on the sim and providing some feedback for them and for the real-world drivers for this Haupt racing team. So it's a really cool story of the integration of sim racing and real-world racing, which I expect we're only going to see more of in the years to come.
And Muller on a dicey moment there, getting through some of GT3 traffic. That's going to let DJ Alessandrini close on the downhill section. So that fight is going to increase in intensity. Up at the front, not missing a thing. 6/10 between O'Gorman Barman and 7/10 between Barman and Kardashilu. So I think O'Gorman is just starting to just slip away slightly from the number 191, but the battle for 4th between Muller and Alessandrini is hot. There's a big crash for one of the FCP Euro cars. I'm trying to see if that's the 73 or 71. It looks to be, no, it's going to be the 73 car. That would be Nate Vincent. That car is destroyed.
Yeah, that's really a shame to see. That's what Bathurst can do to you. Not sure exactly what caused it, but he's doing a great job to stay off the racing line. Try not to get in anybody's way here, but that's not a sight you like to see if you're one of the faster cars coming up on it. You just don't quite know what that car is going to do, but doing his best to limp it around, try to get to the pit lane and maybe get some repairs and get back out. By the way, just to clean up what I was trying to say about the Haupt racing team, it's what used to be Black Falcon and has gone through an ownership change with Hubert Haupt now in a management role as he starts to scale back a little bit with his full-time driving career.
Watching the 73, that reminds me of FCP Euro. And now FCP Euro is the title sponsor for the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship for this season. I was going to make a joke about how you can get all those parts replaced with lifetime guarantee parts from FCP Euro, which would be awful convenient because there looks like there needs to be a lot replaced on that virtual race car. 22 minutes to go. O'Gorman leads Barman now by 0.6 of a second. That lead has been not quite constant. It's been just slightly growing, but there's always the chance that it starts going the other direction. Moving back to our 4th place fight, Muller and Alessandrini. Now some GT4 traffic. Muller slides the GT4 out. He sweeps back to the left, and Alessandrini somehow found a way through that without wadding that Acura NSX GT3 up, and he continues to chase that orange car.
Yeah, there's Andy the Lab right there. And
Oh,
that's not what I was. That's what I was afraid of. In fact, that's a tough spot to try and go side by side with anybody. And Andy the Lab just a bit offline, maybe caught the curb a little bit and shot that car right into DJ. And gotta hope that the damage wasn't too significant.
Yeah, having a look at it here, if we could, there's the hood clasp sort of broken on the headlights on the front, but I think DJ will get right back into it. That won't even phase him. He'll get right back on the throttle pedal. Still inside the top 5. It's not worth giving up just yet. Hamza Gulzar maybe smelling some blood in the water in that number 14. he's creeping up into the picture as well. We'll keep an eye on him. He was running pretty well in the points standings as well. So he's got championship to worry about, not only a race win. There's Nick McMillan putting pressure on him for 6th.
And Gulzar also carrying a 15-second penalty. You can see that to the right of his name there on the top left. So that has to keep in mind. And that's got to be frustrating for McMillan here because he's effectively already passed this car. If the race finished right now, he would finish up ahead. But in order to get up to any of the cars up ahead on track and try and get those spots, he's got to get around to get past a car that he's kind of ahead of already, if you think about it in a certain way. That's one of the frustrating things, I think, sometimes about the post-race penalties.
Another one of the Acura's damaged. That's Carl Whitmer in the number 22, coming down pit lane to get that car serviced. He's had a big impact somewhere, and we'll come get those parts and pieces replaced on that car. Meanwhile, up at the front, O'Gorman's lead was large. Now he's side by side with some traffic, squeezes through. Barman gets run wide, and it was up to over a second. It came back down. Now it's going to go back up again. It's just an accordion effect here, Ryan. The next 20 minutes are going to be crazy up at the front of this field.
Well, especially because as we get closer and closer to the finish, the patience of these lead cars, or cars in general that are fighting for position when they catch slower cars, that patience is going to be less and less. And there wasn't much to show just a moment ago, and that's with 20 minutes left. It's just a tough track to negotiate, even in the best of circumstances. You throw the much slower GT4 cars in, it's cat amongst the pigeons, as they say. And
I've never heard that term ever, but I'm going to add that one to the bag.
Okay, well, add it to the lexicon.
Oh, man. That's a weird Ryan Marine quote that I'm going to add that to the list. I like that.
That is by no means an original. I will not take credit for that one.
Oh, man. O'Gorman and Barman lead the way. 19 minutes to go, and there's a big stack up of traffic in front of them, and this is where your heart starts to beat a little louder if you're O'Gorman trying to poke your way through this without getting involved in anything.
Oh, that's what it's all about. You got to survive this, but maybe you're hopeful you can use it to your advantage. Thought maybe he was going to be able to there, but some nice cooperation from the GT4 traffic not to get in the way of Barman. Kadachulu has dropped back now a couple of seconds off of this scrap for the lead. Now this is interesting because this is not GT4 traffic. This is not going to be quite as easy to work through here for Tom, but a little cooperation and he's able to make that pass on the GT3 BMW.
He goes through for that lap car right up the road. I believe that is Dirk Grunfeld, who found his car kind of sidelined early in the going with that big CMS crash near McPhillamy Park. Now Grunfeld is back rolling in 25th place with the Corteco livery. Good looking race car and mostly repaired from what I understand. And not the greatest day for him, but just kind of hanging on there as it gets dicey with some of the GT4 cars.
Well, you can definitely count on some attrition to go your way in the final 17 minutes. You just hope you're not part of it. That's the challenge. But, that's why you keep plugging along, and you never know if you can make up a couple of spots. But here's the battle for the lead right behind in this technical part of the track, and maybe a little bit of the chrome horn there a couple of times from Tomo.
Now, I think message has been sent here from Tomo to Grunfeld, and he's going to finally get to the inside, and I don't think Grunfeld wanted to fight about that anymore, so O'Gorman goes through, and I think that sets the tone that O'Gorman is on a mission, and whoever gets in front of him better not get in front of him because it's going to end badly, I think.
I hope they get this sorted out here before they get to the chase. If you're a lap car, you really don't want to be going side by side with the leader, and they do get single file, and that's really going to cost Barman because he didn't get that pass made before the initial sweeping part of that corner. So that's probably a good half second or more lost right there just with the whims of fate and where you catch the traffic around this place.
I think sometimes you got to get up on that wheel and be a little bit mean, and O'Gorman did that. 16 minutes to go. Meanwhile, for 5th place, Alessandrini with the damage on the nose of that car is under attack from Gulzar and McMillan. They come through the chase. Gulzar took a swipe at him, couldn't complete it.
Yeah, if you do have damage, that part of the track it's like throwing an anchor out behind the car. Not much you can do about that. Now, the bright side for Alessandrini is he should know that the car he's fighting does have that 15-second penalty, so it's effectively not for position, but I don't think he's thinking about that right now. That was awfully aggressive, and now making a late dive to the inside of some GT4 traffic.
He's a man on a mission. I told you he wasn't going to give up. He was going to make it a show regardless, and now McMillan on the offensive side of Gulzar chases him over to the right side of the mountain straight. Opens up the door on the left, but Next corner's a right-hander. I'm not sure you want to be on driver's left, so McMillan will sit in behind and wait for a better opportunity.
It's going to depend on this GT4 car up ahead that we saw Alessandrini get by. I thought maybe that could open up a possibility here for McMillan. Instead, he's caught on the outside through here. That's not a great place to be, but got some cooperation. It's good to see, and now the battle continues as they climb the hill.
Back up to the front, O'Gorman's got the 191 right behind him. It has been an all-out just slugfest at the front of the field. They are just trying everything to get around each other. Barman lost that lead about 5 or 6 laps ago, and O'Gorman's held onto it, but not by very much. Any mistake, any traffic could totally mix this race up in the final 15 minutes.
Oh, and just look what's ahead. 3 cars, GT4, running side by side, headed towards the chase. That's what the leaders are going to have to deal with here in just a little while. Shouldn't be too much longer. They'll be right up there. That's the kind of speed differential we're talking about between the two classes. Look at close in on the braking. That's what Aero will do. That's what ABS will do. More advanced ABS, I should say, than what you see on the GT4 cars.
Well, both drivers got by that pretty easily. The next battle, though, this might not be quite so easy. O'Gorman's going to throttle down that twin-turbo V6 past the M4, past the R8. O'Gorman continues to put those GT4 cars another lap down, but Barman is right there and keeping that pressure on, keeping the mirrors full in that Acura NSX GT3. Oh, O'Gorman's got a 5-second penalty for contact.
Oh, boy. I wonder if that's for what we saw with the lap car going up the hill just a little bit ago.
I'm not sure about that.
I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was definitely aggressive, but I think everyone got out of that okay, so I'm not really sure why there was a penalty. We're racing for the lead as there's a car turned around. That's one of the NSX vehicles. I didn't see which name it was attached to, but I'm not sure I agree with that penalty, Ryan. We're racing for the lead, and everyone came out the other side okay. I would have just left that be.
Well, I should say straight away that I'm speculating that that's what the penalty came from.
Oh, sure, yeah. It's all we don't actually know, but
that we could have missed something more egregious. Although a 5-second penalty is pretty minor, so I don't really know. That the incident I'm discussing here, I feel is quite minor as well. Yeah, that's a tough one. I think in this part of the track too, it's hard to judge what the car in front of you is going to do, where they're going to slow down, where they're going to get back to power. And so, you know, I think it's hard to issue a penalty unless that there's a spin. So anyway, that's just my opinion. Perhaps there's more out there, a different view that I didn't see, and then maybe it's a completely different incident altogether. But the big news here is as long as Barman is aware of this, then he knows he doesn't have to do anything else. He just has to stay right here behind the rear wing of O'Gorman, and the race win will be his when that 5-second penalty is established after the race. And now for O'Gorman, it's all about turning in qualifying laps as quick as you can and hoping that lap traffic gives you the break that you need to get up by a 5-second margin.
yeah, he's a man on a mission right now. I think his only goal is to get that gap over 5 seconds. That's going to be a challenge, but I think it's possible. I mean, anything's possible at this point. Kondachelou remains in third. If anything gets frisky up between the front two, Lucas Muller hangs on to fourth. Alessandrini, Golzar, and McMillan still battling for fifth into the chase.
Oh, look at this. This is awesome. GT3 racing at its finest. Nose to tail. Not much to separate these cars. Alessandrini, what an impressive quick study he has been without much ACC experience before the last couple of weeks, and running top 5 in a field that is really strong. Some great sim racing talent mixed in with some pro racers who also happen to be very good sim racers, and to run top 5 in this field is really saying something.
Alessandrini trying to break the draft here on the straightaway. Just trying to, that's kind of like an IndyCar technique there, trying to swerve and keep the driver out of the slipstream behind McMillan, getting by that GT4 traffic. Sam Cairns up to 8th place. Look at the traffic he's got to deal with up the road. Lots going on.
Yeah, he's had another good run. I think we talked about him 15, 20 minutes ago, and he's picked up at least another spot since then. I think he was 9th at the time, and just quietly getting the job done right here and actually running down this battle up in front of him. So Sam doing what we've come to expect from him. Had a nice middle stint at Spa last week, and here doing a nice job hanging in there, but catching the GT4 traffic at a difficult spot. And that might, well, that car behind him is not in position, so actually he doesn't have to concern himself with that. Nevertheless, doing his best to try and run down that trio just up ahead, Alessandrini, Golzar, McMillan.
Heading down into the chase now. The 191 remains about a half a second back. 10 minutes and 50 seconds remain in this race. There's a car off the inside. I think that was Andy the Lab. Been a kind of a struggle so far today. But with Alessandrini, Golzar, and look at this fight. This is epic down the back straightaway here. Swerving and sliding.
Great. Just what you like to see. A couple similar liveries there on those BMWs up ahead. Both of them off the pace, but going side by side. Not what the leaders wanted to see right here. That's a tough place.
Oh,
to be
Golzar!
Side by side, and boy, that's the consequence.
Oh, man. And the gravel trap will save that car.
Yeah.
The other one that was turned around, I think. Is that the two? No, I'm trying to figure out what that other car was. Was it Ben? No, one of the classic BMW cars. Didn't catch the name or number.
Yeah, I didn't either, I'm afraid, but that's what I was worried would happen. It's a place where the car is really on edge. Even these GT3 cars, with the amount of downforce they create, you're probably running them pretty trimmed out down around this track because you've got some really high-speed straightaways, including the one they just came from right before, and so the car is not totally confidence-inspiring necessarily. If you're really pushing through there, easy just to twitch a little bit sideways, and when you're running on edge that fast in that part of the track, just a little bit of door-to-door contact can be really costly.
Heading down the hill now, O'Gorman still trying to hold off Barman and get that lead that he needs to kind of eclipse that penalty. Looking pretty unlikely, though. Barman has not been able to, or not fallen off the tailpipes of this 94 since the change in position was had. And this sort of means that O'Gorman's going to have to hope that Barman gets caught up in something else heading down the hill.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure if I agree with how aggressive Barman has been here. All he's got to do is stay within a window, and I know you don't want to get too far back, but I think the closer, if you're much closer than he is right here, there's a higher probability of getting caught up in somebody else's problem. If Tom happened to catch some lap traffic or something like that, and in a bad spot, and maybe get hit by contact or something, you really want to have a buffer so you can react to it up ahead. And so for Barman, I think right now he's in the best spot he can be, knowing that he just needs to be within 5 seconds to ultimately grab this win. I don't think there's any reason to push the envelope and get up too close.
Michael Gandacula keeping an eye on his times. He was a little bit quicker than Barman last time by. Now he's back about 4 seconds. But
and that's
his pace,
important because
yeah,
he's right on the fringe of that 5-second penalty and being able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, so I think he's got to keep himself in sight as well. So that's going to be a good fight. Meanwhile, going back to Alessandrini, he managed to fight off Golzar, but McMillan has not gone anywhere. They fight for 5th place right now, heading down into Hell Corner.
Look at this. Battle rages on. Whoa. You just don't know what the GT4 car is going to do. Do they know you're coming? Are they going to go offline? Are they going to carry their normal racing line? You could see a little bit of indecision there from McMillan, but he was able to get through it nice and clean, and now sits in the slipstream of that NSX. Can he get close enough? Doesn't look like he can here, so it's about positioning himself now through this next sequence, this middle sector, as they climb the hill and then go back down.
Now the left-hander through the cutting. Oh, that's so close to that fence. And Alessandrini with that damaged car. Remember, he's got fairly significant nose damage from contact he had earlier. So he's actually down on pace just a little bit and trying to hold McMillan back. Now he's got to get really aggressive down towards the chase. But through the mountain section, Alessandrini's been so aggressive, he's been able to make speed up there.
Yeah, that's been crucial for him, although right now McMillan has been right on that rear wing and not giving up any ground whatsoever. A bit of a moment there at Skyline, cresting the hill, but was able to pull it back together. Now the need to be patient as they catch some slower traffic. That was some bold driving, but that's what you need to do to stay on the rear wing of your quarry. Whoever you're chasing, you gotta follow them through. You can't get separated by the traffic.
Hearing that the penalty for O'Gorman is for contact with Philippe Simard. So I think when Simard went off originally, that was O'Gorman at fault for that. So it was not the contact between Dirk Grunfeld. Okay, so that makes more sense to me. I was going to say I would have strongly disagreed with the penalty for the contact with Grunfeld just because of the battle for the lead, lap traffic, a tight racetrack. But with the Simard incident, I don't remember. If we saw it, I don't remember it. But if we didn't see it, I understand why that could be a penalty. That makes sense.
I think we did. I think we were on board with O'Gorman at the time, and Simard caught some lap traffic and had to check up, if memory serves, and that was fighting for second spot, and Tom got into the back of him a couple of times there, and Simard got into the wall and recovered to run fourth for a bit, but I guess maybe the damage was too significant and he had to pit, and that's why he dropped down, but for whatever reason, he's not factored in towards the front, currently mired back in 12th. So I do remember that incident. We only saw the onboard look of it, so it's hard to really weigh in too much, but I do think that must have been what it looks like. I mean, that's what we're being told was what caused the penalty.
Yep, well, he's got about a 1.1 second lead now, so he has grown it slightly. Now, the only hope for him is to he's not going to win this race, I think, unless something happens to Barman. His goal now should be to get as far away from Kondachelou as possible. Now, he was faster, but Kondachelou just ran a 10th off his best pace. So remember earlier I said he might be saving something? He might be turning up the wick right now.
Yeah, let's hope so. I'd love to see this battle here at the front. That would be a ton of fun. Not sure he's got enough time to catch them, but he knows, I suspect, what he needs to do to get that spot and benefit from Tom O'Gorman's penalty. Right now running in third, right on the cusp of being inside that 5-second margin. Looks like he's got some clean track up ahead of him. Let's see if he can do some work. Keep in mind, when we had to restart this race quite a while ago at this point, he was the initial pole sitter, got the pole in the first qualifying run and had a nice clean start and built a bit of a lead, had Kondachelou, before that restart that we had to do. And had to requalify, started back in 5th. It never quite materialized as a contender for the race win like I anticipated, but still, a strong run to the podium when several of the championship rivals have had issues. This is a good points day, looking at Kondachelou's outlook for winning a championship.
Well, you're right. I mean, if you look at O'Gorman, at least he missed the entire first round at the Nürburgring, so he's not really much of a conversation in the points picture. My opinion is that you're probably going to have to run and do well in every single race to even have a shot at the championship with how competitive this field is. So Kondachelou's goal should just be to finish ahead of those that he was battling in the points. If we very briefly have a look at what the points picture was for GT3, he is right now 4 points above Barman. So Barman's in front of him. That's sort of the focus, and the goal is to beat or stay close to that 191, which he has done so far. I'd say it's been a successful day.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's probably a sense of a missed opportunity because he didn't get a chance to take advantage of the pole that he had won early on, and that's frustrating for him, I'm sure, especially with Barman up ahead. But this is enough to hold serve with Barman, looking at the championship as it stands right now, and several of the others have had problems. And so if you're in the championship hunt and you see the field of other potential championship contenders whittle down, and we certainly have here, that's a good thing. It makes it that much more straightforward to know what your championship scenarios are as we get towards the end of the season.
As it stands, if Kondachelou is within 5 seconds of Tom O'Gorman when they come to the checkers, that would put Barman as the race winner and Kondachelou second. They would tie, leaving our second round here from Mount Panorama. So that's the scenario if this race finishes as it is right now.
Yeah, and usually with 2.5 minutes to go, you'd say there's a pretty good chance that that's the way it's going to wrap up. But as we have seen, there are a lot of things that can change in a short amount of time around this racetrack. It is so challenging, so difficult, and so unpredictable. And so by no means is this a done deal. I think we'll have 2 more laps to complete here as well.
We certainly will. Alessandrini in the number 47. Acura has an attack from Nick McMillan through the chase. McMillan jumps the curbing, left side's up in the air, and Alessandrini hangs on. He has been an amazing driver on defense in the last 20 or 30 minutes of this race. Probably should have dropped back in several seconds by now. Big dive for McMillan, misses the corner.
Wow, that was close, and you could see that coming in your rearview mirror or rearview camera, as the case may be, in these modern GT3 cars. It's not so much done by mirrors quite often anymore, but yeah, that's enough to distract you sometimes from missing your brake zone when you see someone flying up on you like that. But fortunately, McMillan was able to get it reeled back in and recover. Certainly cost him a lot of time, and now he'll probably be under attack if we can get Golzar a little bit closer. Actually, Golzar's a little further back than I realized, so never mind that. but that's a big break here for Alessandrini, who hasn't had much of a respite so far in this race. Neither has this guy. Tom O'Gorman is defending for his life, as he has been for some time.
Now heading down on Conrad Straight. They'll be coming to the white flag. While this is going on, briefly show you your GT4 fight. Hasn't really been a lot of battles there today. The focus has been on GT3, and that's where we will stay for our final lap as we're coming to the white flag. And again, this is really a nothing burger battle with Barman going out to the left. O'Gorman's got to give up time regardless, and he's going to give up those positions now. So move Barman to the lead, Kondacoglu to second. That should be how things cycle out to be. O'Gorman's off the racetrack just a little bit. So this time through, a couple more kilometers of racing from Mount Panorama, the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship from Bathurst, presented by Luke O'Malley. 1 lap to go for Troy Barman in the 191, who started this race out front, lost the lead for the vast majority of it, and has now found his way out in front again, with Kondacoglu not too far behind, 0.8 of a second.
Well, it's nice that he'll be able to get the win on track, as well as with post-race penalty assessment, which has kind of settled this thing, quite frankly. But always a point of pride to be the first one to actually take the checkered flag and not just relying on the penalty. But it's actually not done yet. Let's be clear about this, because we still have plenty of GT4 traffic to navigate, and the most treacherous racetrack on the planet as well.
Oh, squeezing up the outside of one of the Maseratis. Barman was able to just scrape away just by a little bit. It's a lot of traffic here, though, as he squeezes on through. And one more run down the downhill for Troy Barman in the 191. Still some traffic ahead. Kondacoglu's a little far back, though, even with some help. Now for Forest Elbow for the final time. Barman going to accelerate onto the straightaway. A little bit of a checkup there. Kondacoglu's going to take a big run, but I don't think he's going to get there. Ryan Barman's just too far ahead.
Yeah, a little bit too far back, but Kondacoglu put together the kind of race he needed to. If he wasn't going to win, just maximize your day. Coming home second, there's nothing wrong with that. It's unfortunate that his closest championship rival finishes ahead of him. Oh, it's not done yet, is it, Kyle?
That was way too close for comfort. The GT4 runs off the racetrack. Barman almost lost the lead with a last lap crash, but he's going to hang on for now. Kondacoglu closes 2 car lengths in the braking zone. Checkered flag waving, 1 car length. Kondacoglu's there. Final corner to the checkers. Barman by a nose. He gets it done. Kondacoglu's second. Lucas Muller will come through in third. Tom O'Gorman has dropped way down the pace, and he either is out of fuel, which might be the scenario, yeah, that might be it. Could be out of fuel. But what could have been a race win is going to dwindle away to might not even be a top 5 here at the end.
Well, if it is fuel, keep in mind we were on the cusp of not doing this final lap. It was really close, and maybe we ended up doing 1 more lap than Tom was expecting. But that's us speculating whether or not, the fuel was the ultimate issue.
Well, I think that makes the penalty less of a deal, because he would have run out of fuel regardless. So I think in that regard, that's probably why we saw him slow down. It was not to let those guys fight amongst themselves, just because he was trying to save fuel at the very end of the race. So I would imagine DJ Alessandrini also, I believe, ran out of fuel on the last lap. Again, they worked on their setups together, and that was what created that scenario. But Troy Barman, with all the chaos and confusion those closing laps, he won this race, Ryan, and he would have won it without the penalty or with the penalty for Tom O'Gorman, based on that scenario we just saw.
Yeah, exactly right. Great race from Troy. Didn't get too frustrated after getting shuffled back in the order early on. Stayed in contention. Made all the right moves through traffic. And that's what I think has been most impressive. What he was able to do, dealing with the traffic, being aggressive when he needed to, deferring when he needed to. Really hard to find any fault in the race that he ran today. Kondacoglu, very similar. Just didn't quite have the pace consistently of Barman here today. But I think we've got ourselves a championship duel now looking down the road. If these two can continue to run 1-2 the way they have in the first 2 rounds, then this championship is going to be fascinating to watch it unfold.
a tie in the GT3 point standings, leaving our second round here from Mount Panorama. There's a look at your finishing order. Again, the white and gray numbered backgrounds are your GT3 competitors. The red are your GT4 competitors. And in the fray of that chaotic finish, it was Cavillon again getting a victory in the number 56 Porsche. And then Caleb John Lavender coming through to second, Sensano in third, Kostovic and Reynoso rounding out the rest of the top 5 in GT4. So that kind of slipped under our radar with everything happening in GT3, but today wasn't a whole lot of a battle in GT4. They got split up so much by the other class battles that they just ended up just trying to stay on the course.
Well, Lenore Cavillon has been excellent in both races so far and makes it almost difficult for us to follow the race because we've got so much going on in GT3. And the domination in GT4 is kind of the story, and at a certain point you've told it. But got to give congratulations there. Did a great job, and as I talked about earlier, the difficulty of being in that position where you're the slower class, you have a chance for people to be overtaking you basically at any corner. You never quite know where they're going to be coming from. That is so challenging. You don't really get to dictate when it happens either. It just gets done to you. And to be able to get through that cleanly, continue to put down fast lap times, and basically go unchallenged flag to flag is something really remarkable.
It was an amazing race today. I think we saw an epic battle at the front, and my only regrets from this one are O'Gorman getting the penalty and nosing off Philippe Simard earlier in the day that got him a 5-second penalty, and then the small fuel miscalculation. And that's sort of, when you consider the length of this race, Ryan, O'Gorman running out of fuel is kind of his own fault. He really set the pace for most of the race. Now, he had drivers behind him pressuring him, but his pace really ended up kind of accelerating the race past the point where I think they thought they were going to run, and so it really ended up hurting him in the long run to have the pace that he did today. He ultimately comes home. I think he scored in 4th, so we'll see if that stands. That's the unofficial results, but I don't think he'll be super upset with the day. I think it was going to be the penalty or the fuel, one of the two, both sort of surprises to him, but I think O'Gorman, in terms of pace, was probably the first or second fastest driver out there today.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point I hadn't considered, but you're right. He basically did set the pace for the bulk of this race ever since he got to the lead, but I think, too, even if he wanted to back it down some, there was no way to do that without losing the lead. The pressure was intense, and there were a few drivers that come to mind, Alessandrini being the other, that I thought impressed in their defense. I mean, it seemed like they were fighting a rearguard action the entire race, and somehow were able to get through the traffic, keep their pursuers at bay, and really showed what they were made of. It's so difficult to do that, especially around a place like this when you're constantly looking in your mirrors. Maybe they aren't looking in their mirrors. Maybe that's what makes them so good. But I thought I came away very impressed with several of these drivers and what they did in defense.
So while we wait for a few moments just to gather a couple of our competitors here to talk to post-race, a really solid day again from Bathurst. Ryan, we head to Monza next week, or it's not going to be a week from now, it'll be 2 weeks from now. But Monza, that's another big storyline heading to basically the super speedway in Italy. That's a lot of straightaways and going to be a lot of really intense braking maneuvers and passing.
Monza is a classic track. So many of them on the calendar here. We got Zandvoort on the calendar as well. Laguna Seca to close out the season. It's so cool to go to all these different venues and to bring SRO America to these different venues outside of WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. There's not a lot of these tracks that many of the SRO America drivers have actually been to in the real world. And certainly not an SRO competition. Perhaps they've been there before. But nevertheless, it's going to be another great setting, another classic venue for different reasons, really high speed. Really challenging of a racetrack, but so much different than what we saw here at Bathurst. So it's really going to be something for a bit of an engineering exercise, I suppose, getting the car all set up and ready for that, coming off of a much different circuit here in Bathurst.
All right, we're going to move on now to our race winner in GT4. That'll be Honor Cavillon. We'll move on now and talk to them. So moving on to the interview section of this. You got a copy? Honor Cavillon, you got a copy?
Yes.
I got you. Well, welcome. First of all, congratulations on an amazing race. Super well driven. GT4, GT3 interaction was pretty wild today. I think the field got split up, and it looked like you just drove off into the distance, but I know it wasn't quite that easy.
Oh, no, definitely not. Seeing that I opened the quite a gap to P2. I didn't take any risk. If I had a GT3 behind me at the technical section of the track, like the downhill section of the mountain, I'd just let them pass, even if it meant losing a bit of time.
The start of their first race kind of ended up with a big pileup at the exit of the first corner. How much did that reset sort of affect your mindset, and how much did you change qualifying a second time versus the first time out?
Not at all. In fact, it was just the same. Just having a second go at it.
Going through the motions, getting another victory. Congratulations on another one. We'll see you at Monza in 2 weeks. Congratulations.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Moving on now to Troy Barman, who's joining us here. Troy, wow, that was an incredible race. One of the most entertaining races I think I've ever seen here in our FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championships. Talk to me about the battle you had with Tom O'Gorman, lap after lap after lap, and then the closing laps when O'Gorman was no longer a threat, but all of a sudden Kondakcioglu is breathing down your neck. Troy, you got a copy? Hey, Troy Barman, you got a copy? All right, we're going to come back to Troy here in just a moment. In the meantime, Ryan, talking about the qualifying a second time, it seemed like that was not a big deal for some, but the GT3 order shook up quite a bit from the first attempt to the second.
Yeah, that's very true. And in a lot of respects, unfortunately, it becomes the story of the race, especially if you're Michael Kondakcioglu. You really have to wonder what this race might have been for him and what the point situation leaving Bathurst might have been had he been able to keep that pole position that he had initially. But that said, I think it was the most fair opportunity to do the restart. We had that chance to do it. So much of the field was caught up in that incident on the initial start that it really would have left us with a shell of what we might have had for a race otherwise. And I credit the organizers for getting on that as quickly as possible and making that change. Unfortunately, it called for a full server reset. Nothing we could do about that. Therefore, the qualifying results from the first time around didn't count. They weren't still in the system, so we had to redo that as well. And we just had to proceed as best as we could. And I give credit as well to all of the drivers for adapting and coming along with us, dealing with it on the fly. Just a really difficult set of circumstances, but I think handled as well as possible, given the difficult nature of what transpired.
Well, and going back to Monza next week, it's really going to be a big challenge, I think, because of the long straightaways, Ryan. So, we saw a lot of the battles today be sort of confined by the barriers, but next week, not so much a concern. It's going to be all about diving off into the corners. I do think we've got Troy joining us here now. Troy, you got a copy now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I got you now. Cool. Let's have a chat real quick. Well, today was a pretty wild race. We saw you battling extensively with Tom O'Gorman lap after lap. First of all, take me through the first start that we tried, then the restart, and then battling with Tomo for 15, 20 laps.
Yeah, I was actually a little bit upset because I had set my personal best ever, and then we had to restart, and I actually got a great start, and I was behind Michael, just kind of keeping tail with him. But then I managed to repeat it and actually did better. And just the first 5 laps or something, I'm just kind of hanging on, trying to maintain somewhat of a gap, get my rhythm going, because it's kind of hard in the night, obviously.
Well, obviously, Tom had a penalty that was assessed to him, a 5-second time penalty for avoidable contact earned earlier in the race. Once he started dropping off, what kind of red flags were going up? Because we didn't really know up here what was going on. Turns out he ended up running out of fuel as well. So Tomo falls behind you, and all of a sudden you've got Kondakcioglu fighting you in the closing lap. How much was your heart rate skyrocketing when you saw that Mercedes approaching in the final corner?
I really don't want to know because at first, when he stopped on the side of the track, I thought he was letting me go. I'm like, oh, that's nice. But I guess I didn't know he ran out of fuel. But yeah, and then we, of course, hit the GT4 field, and I'm just like, please, get out of the way. I'm dying. But I managed to avoid that Audi and keep it home. But it was a little too close for what I like.
Maybe a little close for comfort, but what's not right now is you've actually tied Kondakcioglu in the points heading into Monza next week. Do you have to kind of change your mindset going from a tight, confining track like this to a fast super speedway like Monza? And How comfortable and confident do you feel battling Kondachelou over the course of this season? Do you feel like Bathurst is an outlier, or do you feel like you can go toe-to-toe with him everywhere on the circuit?
I absolutely think I can go toe to toe with him. I mean, at Nürburgring, I was not that far behind him. Like, almost the same thing happened in reverse this time. I was catching him at the very tail end of the race, and then he caught me on this one. But I think we're on an equal playing field, both in pace and in the points right now.
Well, dead even heading into Monza. Troy, thanks so much for talking to us. Congratulations on getting yourself a victory here at Mount Panorama. Well earned, hard fought. We'll see you at Monza in 2 weeks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And moving on back to post-race coverage here from Mount Panorama. Ryan, we're going to go over the results one final time before we close out this afternoon. Final thoughts here on Bathurst as we go over our race results one more time. It was a pretty entertaining race from all aspects, but Barman and Kondachelou tied dead even in the standings. Barman feels like he's equal to Kondachelou. What are your thoughts? Which one is your early predictor for the championship, or is it still way too early to call?
I gotta say, it's too early. I would have said coming into this and based off of the first session of qualifying, it would have been Kondachelou. But Barman, I think that race was an eye-opener. He was not really in the mix to win. If you go back at the Nürburgring, still had that second-place finish. But Kondachelou really seemed to have the field handled. I'm not sure I feel that way after this one. That was a really solid race from Barman. Showed some amazing racecraft as well. And I think, too, the different types of circuits we're going to go to probably will bring a couple other names to the mix, as maybe some cars or drivers are better suited at some of the future venues. But if it does just stay these two fighting for the championship, I think we're in for a great one way or the other.
A big thanks again to our partners, FCP Euro, Liqui Corteco, Asus Republic of Gamers and Tough Gaming, Fanatec, AWS, CrowdStrike, Pirelli, Rebellion Timepieces, and Total, all for joining us for the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship, Bathurst, presented by Liqui. In 2 weeks, we'll be heading to Monza for our third round of the championship. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure that you comment and tell us what you'd like to see in our second season of esports racing in SRO America Esports. Thank you so much. We'll see you in 2 weeks from Monza.